Ukraine's finest hour. The words Boris Johnson will be speaking to the Ukrainian Parliament later today.
Good morning. It's 6 o'clock on Tuesday, the 3rd of May. This is Breakfast on GB News with Eamonn, Holmes and Isabel Webster.
Leading the news this morning.
Boris Johnson will be the first world leader to address the Ukrainian Parliament since the outbreak of war in February. Speaking virtually, the PM is set to praise Ukraine's resistance, as well as announce a new £300 million package of lethal aid.
The Prime Minister also announced a new plan to give millions of people the right to buy the homes they rent from housing associations. The government hopes the idea will help Generation Rent.
Plus, would you take a 20-hour flight? Qantas has just announced the world's longest passenger flight. The non-stop journey from Sydney to London is set to launch in 2025.
So good morning to you. Thank you for your company. You're tuned in to the People's Channel, GB News. So remember, we love to hear from you. You can join in any of our discussions by emailing gbviews@gbnews or tweeting @gbnews. So, leading the news this morning, Boris Johnson set to address the Ukrainian Parliament later today, making him the first world leader to do so since the war broke out in February.
So the PM's speech is expected to echo the words of Winston Churchill, as President Volodymyr Zelensky did when he addressed UK MPs at Westminster in March.
Mr Johnson will say, "This is Ukraine's finest hour, an epic chapter in your national story that will be remembered and recounted for generations to come."
In addition, the Prime Minister is set to announce a new £300 million package in military aid, which will include electronic warfare equipment, a counter-battery radar system, GPS jamming equipment and thousands of night vision devices.
His address comes 3 weeks after he travelled unannounced to Kyiv to meet President Zelensky.
Well, let's get more now from Foreign Affairs analyst James Marlowe, who joins us in the studio. Very good morning to you. It certainly appears as if these two have developed something of a special relationship. Very big moment for not just the Ukrainian Parliament, but, you know, for the UK as well, to be leading the way in this way.
Absolutely. Good morning. Since the time that Boris went to Kiev, the Ukrainian capital, and was walking around with the President, Zelensky, without a flak jacket, the number 10 team have been looking for a way to increase on that and market Boris Johnson and his relationship with Zelensky, as you said, and indeed the Ukrainian people. And this is the next thing on the list. So he's found a way to announce this extra aid, 300 million, plus what has also been given beforehand as well. And this is another thorn in the side of the Kremlin and Moscow, and it's an attempt to try and push Putin against the ropes once again.
Is that a bit of a dangerous game for us to be getting involved in, do you think, that given the kind of rhetoric that we've been hearing from Putin and also on his propaganda news channels saying that they could annihilate Britain very, very easily? I mean, the more aid we give, the more of a threat we are to the Kremlin.
Exactly. It's all dangerous. Everything is dangerous at this point. So you have to make the decision as to whether you wish to stay out of the arena as such and close your doors and close your windows, or whether you decide to take a stance against this aggression because, of course, Ukraine is an independent country since 1991. And the feeling is that since he got away with Crimea in 2014, that he has this urge to expand the Russian Federation. This is no secret. He said this before. He's also said that the greatest downfall for the Russian people was the fall of the Soviet Union. And he's always looked at a way of expanding this. This is his opportune time. And if you allow him to continue to expand without any say whatsoever, then, of course, he's going to do exactly that.
So it's going to be a pre-recorded message that's played into Parliament, I believe, for security reasons. But I suppose anyone who has any doubts about it all needs to just look at what's been happening in Mariupol, those first evacuations having to be delayed because the shelling of the steelworks there has resumed.
Absolutely shocking. People are asking why were the civilians still left over there? Well, in some cases, they weren't able to go anywhere. So it was decided that they could stay there in those underground tunnels. Of course, we know those underground tunnels to be, at the time of the Soviet Union, perhaps a nuclear bunker is what has also been suggested. But certainly dozens and dozens, perhaps even 300 or 400 of those tunnels, very safe down there. But the injuries that I've been told as well, I mean, some of the soldiers who've lost limbs, who don't have the right medicine and who don't have the right care, of course, the Russians are looking very carefully just to make sure that anyone who comes out are not a fighter, and that could have been a woman, it could have been a man, it could have been obviously a child as well. They want to make sure, and that's the reason why it stopped again after this, the first 100 people that managed to get out. So I think we're perhaps looking at some really disastrous scenes, and there's people who are stuck in.
It's not very many people, is it, when you think of the thousands that are thought to be trapped in there? I want to ask your opinion about what was being said by the Russian Foreign Minister yesterday, Sergei Lavrov. These bizarre comments about Hitler having Jewish blood, and it's been condemned overnight by Israel. What's Zelensky been saying about it all, President Zelensky?
Well, he hasn't said anything as well, but they are, you're absolutely right. They're not just bizarre, they're dangerous, they're delusional, and Israel's had to play a very tough spot because it's done a bit of a dancing act. It's playing in both fields at this point because the Russians are in Syria. They hold 2/3 of Syria. It's on Israel's northern border. And at the same time, the Russian foreign minister, as you said, Lavrov, he has made this bizarre statement, delusional, dangerous statement, to compare... Well, actually, he's actually said that Hitler had Jewish blood. I mean, it's actually hard for me to say why he would come out with something like this. And the Israelis have been very, very careful with their language and tried to be very fair. They've taken in 16,000 Ukrainian people. They've given an incredible amount of aid. They've also set up, it was the first country and the only country, to the best of my knowledge, setting up a field hospital over there. But yesterday, the Prime Minister Bennett and also the Foreign Minister Yair Lapid came out in pretty much condemnation. The Russian ambassador to Jerusalem was summoned to the Foreign Minister to explain those. We'll have to see whether the Russians actually decide to take that sentence back. I doubt it very much, but unfortunately now you're starting to see a little bit of what's the word? A breakup of the relationship now between Israel and Russia because of these statements. And when you... Go ahead.
Sorry, James. I was just going to say, you were talking about that relationship. We haven't talked about the American relationship, and Joe Biden now very keen to be seen like Boris Johnson on the ground in Kyiv.
Yeah, and it's interesting to see who's leading.
Yeah.
It's Boris. It's Boris who's leading. Boris was the first one there. Of course, his people wanted to make sure that he was the first person over there. Then the Americans came over. Are we going to see Joe Biden there? We'll have to see. But Boris, I think, is quite happy that he is the one who is seen as the leader of the world, and his voice against Putin, and saying that we will back the Ukrainians. Eventually, we will give you enough arms in order so you can make the offensive against the Russians. Firstly, to take care of your cities. This is what the talk is all about today, the address to the parliament in Kyiv, that normal life, to the best of its ability, will resume in Ukraine, certainly in the capitals, in the north and the centre, whilst the war is continuing in the south and in the east, the Donbass region. And then eventually it's Boris, and he said this out loud, it's Boris's intention that the British will back, metaphorically of course, and with arms and with as much aid as possible, will back the Ukrainian offensive against the Russians to kick every Russian out of Ukraine. I think we're looking, that's very long term, and this could be going on for a long time.
But, what do you think of the circus that's involved whenever the president goes anywhere? I mean, even a trip, you've seen that first.
I've been part of it.
You've been tackled by some of those
for
guys.
days before, how they scan and go down drains and whatever it is. I just cannot imagine them allowing the President of the United States in a war zone.
Well, exactly, not least when Antonio Guterres just the other day was visiting Kyiv, and quite deliberately the Russians decided to send a warning shot or two towards the capital just to remind them what they were capable of. It's not without risk, is it?
No, it's not. I mean, you see the usual social media against Boris when he was walking around to say it was all staged because all the buildings appeared to be intact and he was walking around without a flak jacket. Of course, they are. Yeah. You get the usual rubbish on social media. It seems to be growing.
But there is a point here, James. I mean, the difficulty is that Boris, people who can see through him will see a Winston Churchill tribute act going on here.
Yes.
It is an awful situation. It's terrible. But likewise, who are you fooling, Boris, really? I mean, it's is there not a situation where he can turn people against it? Because he knows he's written books on Churchill. Churchill's his big hero, and he's invoking the spirit of Churchill, isn't he, for all of this?
I think to a certain degree, yes. But nevertheless, when you become Prime Minister or President or head of a country, you never really know what to expect. Anything can unfold. This obviously wasn't planned. Nobody really expected the Russians to go into Ukraine in the way that they did. There was the possibility, and I kept talking about it since the end of last year, possibility in the Donbas region where there is Russian support, but not to take the entire country a couple of days after you said that there was no way it was going to take place. And therefore, the reaction from the West, including specifically Boris, and Boris is in a position to be able to do it much more so than the Germans, because, of course, the Germans and other Europeans have to rely on the energy, on the oil that's coming from Russia. Of course, the Germans have actually gone a long way, and they've taken out some of their companies. A lot of corporations have come out. And this is also something else, because the Russians are now open to a lot of cyber attacks, because their people who worked in those who were protecting Russia have now been pulled out of the country as well. So Russia is actually in a very vulnerable spot. And there is talk at the moment, because of these sanctions, that Russia and the Russian people are going to start to feel the effects in a real serious way in the coming months. And it will go back to the Soviet days, where you'll be lining up in those socialist times. And the aristocracy in Russia is really going to be hit very badly. They don't know what's coming their way.
Well, come back and tell us what is coming their way when it happens. Thank you very much indeed. Great hearing from you, James Marlowe, who's a foreign affairs analyst. Thank you very much indeed.
Now, from invoking the spirit of Winston Churchill to invoking the spirit of Margaret Thatcher, perhaps, Boris Johnson wants to give millions of people the right to buy the homes that they rent from housing associations in a policy move that will replicate his predecessor.
Well, the government believes that this can help what is called generation rent to get onto the property ladder. But will it be enough to fix the housing crisis? Deputy Director, General Rent, Dan Wilson, Craw, joins us now. Dan, what do you think of this policy? I would have thought this was a disgraced policy. This has been implemented before, and terrible repercussions as a result.
The big problem with right to buy in the past, and the reason why it does have that bad reputation, is because the government sold off a huge number of council homes at a discount, and didn't allow the councils to then replenish the stock, the houses that were sold off, and just to make them available for more people who needed homes that at a rent that was lower than what the market provides. And without a really ambitious program to replace all that social housing, then we're going to have another disaster on our hands. But my main concern with the current policy is that it's not it's not targeted in the right way. The real problem with the crisis in home ownership arises because the number of private renters has doubled in the past couple of decades, and there's now about maybe 4 times as many under 45s who are renting for private landlords than there are renting from housing associations who this policy is directed at. So it's very small beer in terms of in terms of the impact it could have, and it's a bit mystifying and frankly embarrassing that the government thinks that
all the power to private landlords, surely the answer is more social housing, not less of it.
Absolutely, yes. So I think ultimately, whether you have right to buy or not, fundamentally you need much more social housing. You need to be building much more social housing, because it will help people who are currently struggling with private market rents to pay their bills. We've got a huge cost of living crisis right now, and a big part of it is the fact that people are spending 30, 40, even more than half of their income on rent. If you give them a chance to live in a socially rented home, then that cuts their bills by a huge amount. But we need a really ambitious program to make that happen.
To a really inspirational social housing campaigner who, a really young guy, he'd been using his phone to film falling down, crumbling social housing and really exposing some of the conditions that people are being forced to live in social housing in this country. The government have rightly identified that a lot of people would welcome the opportunity to be able to tackle the repairs themselves, to improve the properties themselves if they could. And the idea of being able to own their own place at a discounted price would empower many people, though, wouldn't it?
It would do. I think, yeah, lots of people would, and it's a natural feeling to want to buy and own your own home, to make all the decisions about it. That's, it makes a lot of sense, giving people that opportunity. I think the trouble is because rents are lower in the social sector, social tenants compared to private tenants who maybe on the same salary or same wages, social tenants actually have a better chance already to buy their own home because they aren't paying as much in rent. They can put more aside every month, whereas giving them another advantage, will potentially, for the Tory party, disillusion a lot more private renters who might be willing to vote for them.
OK, Dan, we'll leave it there. Thank you very much indeed. Dan Wilson-Craw, Deputy Director, Generation Rent. I have to say that we benefited, my family, from being able to buy our council house in about 1982 or so under the Thatcher policy, which all felt well and good, and it was fantastic to be able to get on the ladder, and it gave us a lot of self-respect and esteem, I think. But the awful thing, the betrayal was that housing stock was never replaced. And that is where it goes wrong. You just can't sell this off and have no social housing for people. You just create a bigger and bigger problem. We should be building more select, more tailor-made social housing, not selling it off. But
what happens, these people who then, benefit by getting their own property, if they miss a payment, and, they have to deal with the private sector then, they're going to have much less sympathetic banks than they would from social housing in those sorts of situations.
Well, a lot of them
very
just
quickly
sell it
into
off again and make a lot of money.
Yeah, it's a difficult...
And then they'll sell it to people who'll rent it out.
Well,
It's just, it's a fast buck for somebody or other.
Let us know your experiences, your thoughts on this morning. Get in touch the usual ways. We'd love to hear from you. It is 6:17. We're going to take a look at the headlines this morning.
Russian forces have resumed shelling the Mariupol steel plant after several dozen civilians were evacuated. The complex remains the last stronghold of Ukrainian forces in the city, with many soldiers and civilians still hiding inside.
The government's being threatened with legal action over so-called unreasonable delays in processing hundreds of Ukrainian visa applications. Potential sponsors under the Homes for Ukraine scheme say it's putting refugees at risk.
A leaked initial draft suggests that the US Supreme Court will vote to overturn the Roe versus Wade decision that legalized abortion nationwide in America. That's according to a Politico report. Since the case was heard in 1973, the American Constitution protects a woman's ability to terminate her pregnancy.
The parents of Madeleine McCann have marked the 15th anniversary of her disappearance by saying it is essential they learn the truth of what happened to their daughter. In a message posted online, Kate and Jerry McCann said uncertainty creates weakness and they need answers over what happened to the toddler in Portugal on May the 3rd, 2007.
A parade of stars celebrated American fashion at the annual Met Gala in New York last night. The guests were told to dress in gilded glamour for the annual fundraiser for the Metropolitan Museum of Art. So, we mentioned it in the news there, and later on we're going to be discussing passenger flights. But not only passenger flights, this is the world's longest passenger flight.
Yeah, Qantas has announced that it's going to begin operating non-stop flights from Sydney to London in 2025 that will take 20 hours. So we're asking you this morning, what's the strangest thing, the weirdest thing, the worst thing that you've witnessed on a long-haul flight?
That you're cooped up for 20 hours with all those people around you.
That's bad enough.
Yeah.
What if someone next to you dies, for example? I was chatting in the newsroom with my colleagues earlier. They said they'd heard a story where somebody tragically had had a heart attack, and the person sitting next to them then had to spend the rest of the long-haul flight next to that person.
Yes.
And another story we heard this morning was that she'd been on a flight to Australia, I think from Dubai, and an Aussie bloke had got so drunk he tried to open the doors of the plane. 20 hours is an awfully long time if somebody's ill, if somebody's drunk. You're all cooped up together. So let us know your experiences,
and
your
there
thoughts.
are people who get amorous as well.
Oh, there are. Yeah, the Mile High Club. Don't want to hear those stories. Thanks.
There's anything can happen, but I always think of the cabin crew involved in that. I mean, they do such great work, but you guys must see some sights. So if you're cabin crew, former cabin crew, you've got a tale to tell.
Tell us your
We're
story.
here listening. GB Views at gbnews.uk. Or you can tweet on GB News with that one.
Yeah, and we'll be speaking to a former pilot, an airline safety expert, on this very subject about 6:45, first of all.
Now, remember, the way you would do that flight now is you would have a stop off in somewhere like Dubai or Singapore.
Delightful.
But it's not much. It's only an hour and a half or so. So is it better just to stay on for 20 hours or to take a break and take 22 hours or so to actually get there? It is a long way to go.
20
I mean, I've
hours.
flown to Australia a number of times, but I always think it's so long, but then New Zealand is longer. So what's the longest flight you've ever done as well? Here's the weather, and I tell you, the good news on that front is it's set to get, well, there's good news and bad news. It's set to get better, but most people were off yesterday. Nobody's going to be off for Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, but anyway, it's going to be good.
Looking ahead to today's weather, and the UK is looking rather cloudy in most areas this morning with some patchy rain in places. Let's take a look at the details. By the middle of the day, some brighter weather will be developing across the southwest of England, although this is likely to spark off a scattering of sharp showers. The southeast is likely to remain under a thicker blanket of cloud, and although most places look dry, the odd spot of drizzle is possible. Heading across to Wales, and here cloud will be lifting and thinning to give some sunshine, although as it warms up, a few showers will break out. The Midlands will continue to see rather a lot of cloud, giving the odd patch of light rain, and as a result, the temperature will be pegged back a little bit too. It'll feel quite chilly across parts of northeast England, as cloudy skies and some local drizzle will be combined with a cool, albeit gentle breeze blowing in off the North Sea. Most of Scotland will be shrouded in a blanket of cloud as well, and there'll be a bit of an east to west split in temperature, with the highest values towards the west. Little sunshine is likely across Northern Ireland around lunchtime, and there'll be a few showers, especially in the east. Nonetheless, temperatures will be around the early May average. Some heavier showers will develop across Wales and the southwest this afternoon, and rain will arrive in the northwest this evening. And that's how the weather is shaping up for the rest of the day.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes & Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debates, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes & Kerr.
On radio, they call it the drive time slot, 4 p.m. until 6 p.m. as listeners head home. It's that part of the schedule when the dust of the day's events begin to clarify, and we try to make sense of it for you. Brazier is drive time for radio and TV. It's fast, it's punchy, it's opinionated, there's a Brazier angle and a little bit of levity.
That's the question. That's two questions, actually.
That's Brazier, Monday to Thursday, 4 till 6 on GB News.
Hello, I'm Patrick Christie's.
And I'm Mercy Moroki.
Make sure that you join us Monday to Thursday, 10 a.m. until midday, right here on GB News for To The Point.
We're not afraid to talk about the topics that matter to you or the big topics that always matter.
We cover absolutely everything, from the breaking political stories of the day to law and order, what's going on in the channel. We're not afraid to hold people to account.
We always make sure we include your views on our show.
Indeed, if you're thinking it, you can guarantee that we're saying it. So make sure you join the conversation with us, 10 a.m. until midday, Monday to Thursday, for To The Point on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
I wasn't sure.
The local council elections are taking place in Scotland this week, as they are, I think they are everywhere, aren't they? Yeah, yeah, right. So the SNP is expected to dominate. Labour and the Conservatives will battle it out for the remaining seats. Well, our Scotland reporter, David Donaldson, he went to East Lothian to get a sense of what issues people there would like to see improved. Here's his report.
Bass Rock, one of the most scenic views off the East Lothian coast, which is famous for top-class golf courses. The historic town of Dunbar is situated 30 miles east of Edinburgh and has a population of just over 10,000. So, what issues do people there want to see addressed?
We have a big lack of small industrial units. It's really strangling business. We have a huge amount of holiday homes that we need to somehow get the holiday homes taxed so they get the prices down for local people so local youth can actually stay in the area.
The coronavirus and that, just at its end there, that they, you know, with the wearing the face masks and that could have been, you know, like brought in line with what was happening in England and all the rest of it, you know, and it seemed to be that Nicola Sturgeon just seemed to keep it going and going and going, and we were the last people to, you know, lose a face mask.
That's what the people of Dunbar are looking for, but just along the motorway is the market town of Haddington. It was once the fourth largest town in Scotland in the high Middle Ages and is steeped in agricultural history. These local people told me what action they want to see taken by councillors.
I would like to see an improvement in the high streets, in just about every town, I think, in East Lothian. Big support for that. Also with the roads, that would be, I've just realised I've got a rip in my tyre from a pothole, I imagine. Support for the NHS, because actually I'm a retired nurse and I know it's been pretty awful for them. And I suppose schools as well, teachers. I've got grandchildren, so just like, lots of support for them.
What I'd like to see happen is probably more youth centres in the town. When I was younger, we used to go to a youth centre. When I was younger, gets the kids off the street to cause a mischief. I'd like to see that more happening again in the near future. That's what I'd like to see more happening.
Well, I've been to Dunbar and Haddington trying to find out what local people want to see happen in the East Lothian Council elections. We've seen a wide range of views, really. Some people trying to get young people better onto the property ladder. Also young people in terms of youth clubs as well, get youth clubs for them to try and help them out. We've seen some people disenchanted with the SNP as well with regards to wearing face masks. So quite a lot of different things here. We'll find out more, of course, as we go to the polls, and eventually we'll find out afterwards what sort of action is going to be taken on the issues that really affect the people of East Lothian. David Donaldson, GB News.
Good report, Davy. Enjoyed that. But here's what I'm going to say. It's the same issues every time. Every time there's an election, it's never sorted out. These things are never, ever sorted out. And that lady came on there and she talked about the high streets. The neglect there has been allowed to go on and on for years. We talk about the roads. What more can I say? No one seems to be doing anything about that. And so many issues. We talk about getting young people onto the property ladder if that's what they want. But I still say you cannot do that at the expense of social housing. You need social housing, and people need social housing, and they need the dignity of living in a social house that brings them. So I just say, if we replayed from the last council elections, what was affecting people and what they needed, it would be the same, and it would have been the same the one before, and the same. So there's something wrong, and it must be the system.
Yeah,
that's what I think.
Yeah, I mean, I like to hope that there have been improvements in the elections that get people to vote on the issues that really matter to them. I live in hope that that's happening. Let us know your views, your thoughts. So obviously, you don't need to tell us how you're voting on Thursday, but what are the issues that really get you going? Let us know. And don't go anywhere. We're going to take a quick break, but after that, we're going through your Tuesday morning newspapers alongside Amy Cameron and Kevin Craig in just a moment.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debate, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
On radio, they call it the drive time slot, 4 p.m. until 6 p.m. as listeners head home. It's that part of the schedule when the dust of the day's events begin to clarify, and we try to make sense of it for you. Brazier is drive time for radio and TV. It's fast, it's punchy, it's opinionated, there's a Brazier angle and a little bit of levity.
That's the question. That's two questions, actually.
That's Brazier, Monday to Thursday, 4 till 6 on GB News.
Hello, I'm Patrick Christie's.
And I'm Mercy Moroki.
Make sure that you join us Monday to Thursday, 10 a.m. until midday, right here on GB News for To The Point.
We're not afraid to talk about the topics that matter to you or the big topics that always matter.
We cover absolutely everything, from the breaking political stories of the day to law and order, what's going on in the channel. We're not afraid to hold people to account.
We always make sure we include your views on our show.
Indeed, if you're thinking it, you can guarantee that we're saying it. So make sure you join the conversation with us, 10 a.m. until midday, Monday to Thursday for To The Point on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
.32 is the time. We're going to bring you up to date news-wise. This is what's happening.
Russian forces have resumed shelling the Mariupol steel plant after several dozen civilians were evacuated. The Azovstal complex remains the last stronghold of Ukrainian forces in the city, with many soldiers and civilians still hiding inside.
The government's been threatened with legal action over unreasonable delays in the processing of hundreds of Ukrainian visa applications. Potential sponsors under the Homes for Ukraine scheme say it's putting refugees at risk.
At least 300 people were intercepted on 9 small boats in the English Channel yesterday. Crossings began on Sunday after an 11-day hiatus due to strong winds and choppy seas.
A genetic test to spot a rare form of eye cancer in babies is being rolled out across the NHS for families at risk. The test identifies those with retinoblastoma, and it's likely to identify around 50 cases each year in England.
And Sir Billy Connolly is being honoured with a BAFTA Television Fellowship. The 79-year-old comedian, also known as the Big Yin, will be celebrated on Sunday for a career spanning more than 5 decades.
Here come your papers, and you can read all about it with Kevin Craig, who's a PR expert, and Amy Cameron, who's a climate expert. Aren't you?
I've been elevated from campaigner to expert, which I'm quite into.
I think that's good. And I tell you what, Amy, there's not a day goes by that there isn't a story that I think of you. There's always a, what would Amy's view be on this? But we're going to start with Right to Buy. This is the Sun, page 2, Kevin. We've been talking about it already here. Is this the answer to the generation rent?
Well, this debate for me is very personal. Like you, I heard earlier.
Yes.
Because my family also benefited from Right to Buy. And when you, as a government, allow people to buy their own home, it wasn't the case in our family, but for many families, I've done a lot of election campaigning, it goes through generations. People never forget it. It was one of the most powerful things Margaret Thatcher ever did. Nobody knows, of course, that the right to buy policy first appeared in Labour's 1959 election manifesto, and there were left-wing elements of the party that wouldn't allow it to eventually go through. And so I think, I hear your worries about building new homes.
Replacing them,
Yeah, but just do that as well. You know, I had decades, Eamonn, of local authority housing.
Yeah.
The council wouldn't get it done. You feel lost and disempowered.
But
It
they're
can
not
be
funded.
brilliant.
You see, Kevin, it all comes back to this: a headline grabber for either the local elections or the next general election, whatever it is. And it all sounds very good. But it's not very good, because you need social housing. You just cannot say to everybody else, well, we don't care, you're a fire officer, you are a nurse, you are a teacher, whatever, and you need to live in London or Birmingham or Manchester, whatever. We've got no homes for you, so you're on your own. You go to the private sector. It's a headline grabber, and it's a nonsense. Like you and me, we've both bought our council houses, but my betrayal, I think where we were betrayed is we thought this is a great thing and it gives dignity to our family and it's fantastic.
Yeah.
But there was no replacement of those houses.
Indeed, but that doesn't mean that right to buy in itself is wrong. The bigger problem is human nature when new homes come forward, and we've all seen it across the country, whether it's Scotland, England, Wales, Northern Ireland, new home plans, and then you get the local community, oh, we're not against them in principle, just not in this location, not here.
Yes.
How many times have we seen that? So any government that gives people a right to buy but builds new homes, that's a winner. Because I agree with you.
I absolutely agree. And the way it's done, not sprawling estates, you know, select little areas that give people dignity. And I could sit, you and I, that you've come through the experience, you've shared the experience, and people who are in social housing or council housing may all be tarred with the same brush, but there is a dignity. People still need a home. They, you know, if they go out to work, they come back, they pay their rent, they're good tenants.
Oh, and not everyone wants to buy their own home. And, you know, London, I can tell you, in Waterloo in particular, incredible standard social housing. People like Coin Street cooperatives.
Yes.
You'd never want to buy your own home if you live there. It's amazing.
I know exactly what you're talking about. That's near the ITV building, or the former ITV building.
It's sensational, but, you know, the party, whether it's SNP, Tories or Labour, that actually does both parts of this, right to buy, but constantly replenished housing, will win huge numbs of votes.
Okay, good.
I think it's interesting, something you just picked up on there, that is that some people don't necessarily want to buy a home at all times. And while I totally support the need for more social housing, I also wish we could have a much more open conversation about how we control our rental market in the UK. In the UK, we have this kind of ideological obsession with home ownership, which is, I understand, but lots of it is driven because of how precarious people feel within the rental sector, and there are ways that we could control that, which would allow people to move to work, to move to different homes.
I think the thing is, Amy, it's the private sector is the problem. It may well be the solution, but it's the problem. If it's social housing and you're paying your rent to the local authority,
absolutely,
you will not feel the same abuse, will you not?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think, unfortunately, we have a situation where a staggering majority of MPs in the House of Commons are also landlords, which means that whenever we try to bring in more progressive controls around rental prices, around implementing basic standards in rental properties, we get pushback on the House of Commons benches. I think other countries have a much more progressive approach to rental, which allows people to live in decency,
Germany,
in rental properties.
As Amy suggests, you know, and there's nothing wrong per se with landlords, let me put that on the record, but in Germany it's very easy. Pass a law, legislate it, rent controls. We used to have it here. It's not some radical socialist thing to be worried about. It's just,
do you know what? You said there's nothing wrong
sector.
with landlords, and I agree, and I know so many people who've bought properties and then now rent them out. Good, decent people who want to do the right thing.
You're looking at one, Eamonn.
Good, and you want to do it. If a tenant came to you and said, there's water running down my wall, you said, don't worry, I'll get that sorted.
And the rest of it.
But what about the rest of them who don't bother? The amount of penny-pinching Scrooges that are out there.
Bring in laws, like Amy suggests, reasonable, fair-minded British laws to encourage good practice.
And give tenants some rights. At the moment, as a tenant, the only right you really have is to move out.
Scandalous.
And then you're left absolutely at the whim of the market. I live in a rental property in London where, apropos of nothing, they put my rent up 42% from 1 year to the next.
Outrageous.
People can't absorb that kind of
what
cost.
Was the idea to get you to move out?
It's incredibly unclear. The area was going up in value, and think they just wanted to implement a price hikes. And that's what drives this desire for home ownership, because people feel so unstable. If we could dampen that down and give people some decency in rental, I think that'd be a big part of the
It's a big talking point today, and thank you very much indeed, both of you, for your views on it.
Amy, let's talk about the story that's on the front of The Guardian this morning about the legal action, this class action that's been brought against Priti Patel for the failings in getting these Ukrainian refugee visas sorted. What are they saying?
So this is another day, another story of our mortifying response to the Ukrainian refugee crisis. And now we're hearing we're going to face legal action from Ukrainians who are clogged up in our completely ineffective two visa systems that we're operating. I think this is probably the first of a few that we will see. So this is about Ukrainian adults and families stuck in the system, but we're also expecting to see more legal action around children trying to access foster placements that they've been offered. We're hearing terrifying stories of people considering sending children back to Ukraine because they can no longer afford to house them in Poland, where they've been waiting weeks. Some of these people have actually had their visas approved and the Home Office just haven't told them.
I mean, the defence that the Home Office have been saying is that when it comes to children and granting visas, they have extra checks, which you would expect, so it does often take longer. But as you say, to be sending children back into a war zone does seem counterintuitive.
Are security checks because they don't have passports, and that's a requirement of the visa system, which we are quite uniquely implementing.
OK, there's something else that just keeps reoccurring. You can't get a doctor, you can't see a doctor. There are big GP shortages. Front page of the Daily Mail again today. Where have our GPs gone? I do point out, though, they have a particular bee in their bonnet about doctors. They're not fans of GPs. And, you know, we do respect GPs. You know, they should be a lauded part of any community, made to feel vital. They are vital. But where the heck are they? Why do people not want to work in this sector?
Well, Eamonn, this story, as you say, massive splash in the Mail today, front page, all of page 2. And I think the problem is that for GPs are not immune to the fact that their working patterns have also changed in the last few years due to COVID. And what this... I mean, it is very Daily Mail, very long story, but there's some interesting facts in there. For example, still, only 62% of the 29.6 million appointments conducted this March were face-to-face, and government research shows most GPs now work no more than 3 days a week. Well, the GPs I know don't work 3 days a week, but maybe that's just my own personal experience. They work a lot harder. And I think it's just the case that the system is under more demand than ever. And what also happens is when you have developments and new housing put up across the country, there's often a lack of planning to go with that to ensure that the GP surgeries that are required are built. And, you know, it's about money, ultimately. And do we fund it well enough?
But, you know, if 62% of those appointments are not face-to-face, are 62% of people unhappy with that? Because a lot of that could be smart working. You know, do you have to go in and see people who are calling from their desk in the office, they don't want to take time out of their day to
There's lots of times that I would just say,
fine,
look, I've got a fungus on my tongue.
It's not necessarily a bad thing. I think if you've got small kids or you're elderly and you're vulnerable, you want to have that one-to-one contact. But for a lot of working people particularly, you just want the quick, easy option. So it's not necessarily a bad thing. Yeah, just give me the drugs.
No, I think that remote appointments is actually like an advancement that's been incredibly useful for GPs and for patients. I'm the same. I'm working. I would often rather be able to kind of fit that in with my day. I think the reality is that GPs are the front line of a largely crumbling NHS, and they face a lot of the flack from a public who sense that the service they're getting has been declining over the years. And understandably, in their frustration, they take that out on the person who they do have face-to-face time with. I don't think it's helped by titles like the Daily Mail, which have engaged in quite a lot of GP bashing over the pandemic as well.
And I look and I say, they say, you know, they do 3-day weeks. Well, I'm sure that's not true. Where are they for the rest of the week?
Well,
you know, because they may be locums, they may be at that GP.
A lot of women are GPs, and a lot of them work part-time once they've had children, you know, that doesn't mean they're not turning up. They're doing, exactly.
And here's just a final question on this, perhaps, that you wouldn't guess from the story headline that also in here is that in March 2022, GPs in England had more than 15 million patient consultations, the highest number since records began. So in parallel with the headline, where have all the GPs gone? Well, in the same piece, doing a record number of appointments.
I have always said this, that doctors, dentists, they should be indentured into the NHS so that you go and you say, hello, I'm going to pay for your university course, but the contract deal is for 6 years you've got to sign up to the NHS.
Like the army sort of thing.
Like the army, the Air Force,
minimal
or something
service,
like that. Yeah. And I don't really see what the problem is, because you get dentists in particular who've got a licence. I mean, who would be a dentist? I wouldn't be a dentist. It's an amazing skill. I certainly wouldn't be a dental nurse. But dentists, they have potential to make a lot of money. And too many of them go to the private sector where they make that money, and then you feel sorry for people who either won't pay or can't pay for having their teeth checked.
Yeah, I mean, I'd be interested to find out how many publicly trained NHS doctors or dentists don't end up doing some time at the very least. Because in my anecdotal experience, even when you meet those folks in the private sector, they're all still doing or have done big shifts to pay back to the country what we gave them. So it'd be good to know more about that.
And I think we should, in the education system, be encouraging people to go into jobs like that, to be a doctor, to laud them for that, to actually... I mean, I'd be so proud if one of my children was a doctor. If I was a doctor, if I had the brains to be a doctor, I wouldn't be sitting here. I can tell you that.
You'd be a brilliant doctor.
GBV. But you know what? I went off being a doctor when they got rid of the white coats.
Yeah.
You see, they could come in looking like...
Well, do you know James Marlowe, who came in to talk about Russia this morning, he mistook me as a nurse this morning, thought I was coming to take blood. Yeah, he said I've come dressed as a nurse.
They don't do that anymore. They go to these scrubs and these things. I think you should have a nice white coat and a stethoscope and be called Mr.
You're hilarious.
I think Mr. Holmes.
Because you're a consultant.
Yeah,
no,
Mr.
you're
Holmes.
too posh to be a doctor.
Mr. Holmes. I could be very good. No one does Carry On films.
I think just stop that.
I've lost control.
Yeah, stop that there.
James Robertson Justice. And what's his name? Well, that fantastic guy
I
Phillips.
don't know. Flying doctors, that would work for me. That would be good.
Yes.
And enough of this, I think. Kevin, Amy, we'll have you back in about 40 minutes. But for now, we're going to take another look at your headlines this morning. Russian forces have resumed shelling the Mariupol steel plant after several dozen civilians were evacuated. The Azovstal complex remains the last stronghold of Ukrainian forces in the city, with many soldiers and civilians still hiding inside.
At least 300 people were intercepted on 9 small boats in the English Channel yesterday. Crossings began on Sunday after 11 days of strong winds and choppy seas.
And a parade of stars have celebrated American fashion at the annual Met Gala in New York. This year's guests were told to dress in gilded glamour for the annual fundraiser for the Metropolitan Museum of Art.
People dying on planes. I mean, I've heard of snakes on a plane, but...
Have you?
Yeah, the great film. Have you never watched the film?
Oh, no, what happened
Snakes
there?
on a plane.
Oh, no, I've not seen that one. One to look out
one up
for.
you. And then there's snakes on a train as well.
You digress.
Yeah.
You digress. I'm going to have to work hard to keep you in a lane this morning.
Fergus says, when you die on a plane, it must be an awful thing.
Yeah.
Awful thing to die
yeah.
anywhere, but particularly
on a 20-hour flight.
The body is moved to a seat at the back of the plane and it's wrapped in a blanket like a mummy. I know a cabin crew member who had to do just that.
I think they sound lucky, because we heard this account, didn't we, of someone dying in the seat next to them and they just stayed there. Yeah. Cheryl says, I can't think of anything worse than a 20-hour flight in an economy class, especially if you're someone who doesn't sleep on flights. Yep, that's me. Longest I've done is 14, and the restlessness was unbearable.
You see the con we get with airlines now, and they build things like business class, and you pay so much more, whatever, for business class. You can't recline your seat. No one, they've now done away. Matter of fact, I think there was an airline this week who's now introduced seats that just don't recline at all, because nobody
Great, so you can sit upright for 20 hours. So, no thanks.
Because even if you had a reclining seat, you'll have somebody behind you kicking or tutting, you know, when all you want to do is relax, and you've paid to relax. Why shouldn't you? Somebody's eating their dinner behind you. They don't want that. And we talk about all of this because Qantas has announced it will begin operating non-stop flights from Sydney to London, and they're going to do this, in 2025?
Yeah, they're going to take about 20 hours, and they will be then officially the world's longest passenger flights. And the route that was launched in 1947 once took 58 hours and 7 stops. Well, former airline pilot and now airline safety expert Terry Tozer joins us this morning. Just the man, then, to tell us whether or not this is really going to be safe for passengers.
I don't see why it shouldn't be safe. As you've already alluded to, I mean, it might be a bit tedious, particularly if you're sitting in a not very comfortable economy seat. I've got no idea what kind of cabin configuration they're going to produce. But yeah, 20 hours is a long time, but there's no real safety issue. Drink a lot of water, basically, and take your shoes off. And that's about all there is to it.
Shoes off, you can't get them back on again.
That is a point, I guess. Wear something flexible.
You say there's no real safety issue. Just last year within my family, someone had a heart attack unexpectedly. The same person then went on to have appendicitis. What if that happens mid-air on a 20-hour flight? And say you're over dodgy airspace like Afghanistan or Ukraine, heaven forbid. It's not like you can just land anywhere these days.
Well, you shouldn't be over dodgy airspace. That's the simple answer. And, you know, the captain will make a decision about whether or not they have to divert and land. Obviously, you know, we all think of Alexei Navalny having that situation. Unfortunately for him, the captain did decide to divert, which saved his life. And I mean, we've all been in situations where you have to take unusual decisions, but you know, that's something that should become, you know, part of the normal procedure, really.
Terry, the fact that this will become normal, what has happened to make this become normal? The craft, the particular type of aircraft that we're using or they're going to use, tell us about that.
Well, the aircraft have become more and more efficient, basically, and the Airbus A350 that Qantas are planning to use is capable of flying very long sectors, you know, without refueling. There are always requirements for fuel reserves, and that will all have been taken into account. Basically, they can fly for longer and burn less fuel per hour, and that's what's made it possible.
Yeah, absolutely incredible. So have you ever done a flight like that yourself, Terry, as the pilot?
No, my long-haul experience was on things much more pedestrian than that. We would probably have a maximum sector time of around 7 or 8 hours. But I mean, I've flown as a passenger, as no doubt many others have, on fairly long sectors. And yeah, I mean, it can be tedious. It depends, as you were mentioning earlier, it depends how comfortable your cabin is. If you're fortunate enough to be in business class with a flat bed or a first class, it's obviously no big deal at all. But yeah, in economy, it can be quite hard going.
Yeah, and the crews, the strain that this would put on cabin crew and pilots, what way would you work this with pilots? Do you get some sleep during that time, and if so, where?
Well, if they're going to do a flight of that length, they would have to have what they call a heavy crew. So there would need to be more than just the normal 2 pilots. They would need to have in-flight rest facilities like a bunk just behind the flight deck. And, you know, basically they would work it out so that each one of them complies with the rest regulations. It would be something like one crew does the takeoff and climb to cruising altitude, and then there'll probably be a cruise pilot that comes and takes over, and then another crew for landing or something like that.
Terry, great. Thank you very much indeed, my friend. Terry's a former airline pilot. He's now a safety expert, airline safety expert. So it was good to get his views on that.
I'm chuckling because so many of these emails that you guys are sending in are not repeatable.
Unreadable.
But suffice to say, Derek sent one in about his dad who had a dodgy kebab before boarding a long-haul flight, and the rest will let your imagination complete. Lots of horror stories about people dying, people drinking vodka.
That's another thing I want to bring up.
Oh, right.
Loos.
Yeah.
In airplanes.
I hate toilets.
I could demonstrate to you what it is like for a man to...
Please don't.
You have to limbo dance, basically, because can you imagine there's a curved hull, right? You've got the loo there, your head's there. All the men are nodding in my ear here. They're saying things. So basically you've got to bend backwards, right, to do whatever you have to do. It's all right for you. You can sit down.
Well, have you ever tried to change a baby's nappy in one of those ridiculous things? Because the changing table comes down over the loo and the door was behind you and you've got a wriggly baby. Nightmare. Nightmare.
Well, no, the
Horrible.
real nightmare is just children in general. Having them on a plane.
I've heard it all now.
I would ban all
children.
Absolutely. You should have an adult only.
Oh no, that's fine, but let's not just ban kids.
No, ban them. Just ban them. Leave them behind in lost property.
No, yeah. As a parent, you would much rather be around other parents who are in the same pain than having these tutty, grumpy people going as if they never had small children themselves.
Oh, we did, but
well, exactly. But we didn't go on flights.
I didn't sit and talk to my. Yes, Timothy, the flight will take 7 hours and we're flying to Antigua and we'll be flying to the high. Shut up. Gosh.
Eamonn.
People talk to 2-year-olds.
People love children. You can't hate the kids.
Don't treat them as if they're adults. People say just keep quiet. Suck sweets, give them Calpol, get them going to sleep with all of that. But we take a break, Isabel?
Yeah, I think so. Might be appetite.
This is your pilot speaking. We'll be flying at a height of 36,000 feet, and in 3 minutes' time, we'll be landing at 7 o'clock and bringing you all the latest news headlines. Have a good flight. Back after this.
Looking ahead to today's weather, and the UK is looking rather cloudy in most areas this morning with some patchy rain in places. Let's take a look at the details. By the middle of the day, some brighter weather will be developing across the southwest of England, although this is likely to spark off a scattering of sharp showers. The southeast is likely to remain under a thicker blanket of cloud, and although most places look dry, the odd spot of drizzle is possible. Heading across to Wales, and here cloud will be lifting and thinning to give some sunshine, although as it warms up, a few showers will break out. The Midlands will continue to see rather a lot of cloud, giving the odd patch of light rain, and as a result, the temperature will be pegged back a little bit too. It'll feel quite chilly across parts of northeast England, as cloudy skies and some local drizzle will be combined with a cool, albeit gentle breeze blowing in off the North Sea. Most of Scotland will be shrouded in a blanket of cloud as well, and there'll be a bit of an east to west split in temperature, with the highest values towards the west. Little sunshine is likely across Northern Ireland around lunchtime, and there'll be a few showers, especially in the east. Nonetheless, temperatures will be around the early May average. Some heavier showers will develop across Wales and the southwest this afternoon, and rain will arrive in the northwest this evening. And that's how the weather is shaping up for the rest of the day.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debate, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
On radio, they call it the drive time slot, 4 p.m. until 6 p.m. as listeners head home. It's that part of the schedule when the dust of the day's events begin to clarify, and we try to make sense of it for you. Brazier is drive time for radio and TV. It's fast, it's punchy, it's opinionated, there's a Brazier angle and a little bit of levity.
That's the question. That's 2 questions, actually.
That's Brazier, Monday to Thursday, 4 till 6 on GB News.
Hello, I'm Patrick Christie's.
And I'm Mercy Moroki.
Make sure that you join us Monday to Thursday, 10 a.m. until midday, right here on GB News for To The Point.
We're not afraid to talk about the topics that matter to you, or the big topics that always matter.
We cover absolutely everything, from the breaking political stories of the day to law and order, what's going on in the channel, and we're not afraid to hold people to account.
We always make sure we include your views on our show.
Indeed, if you're thinking it, you can guarantee that we're saying it. So make sure you join the conversation with us, 10 a.m. until midday, Monday to Thursday, for To The Point on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Ukraine's finest hour. The words Boris Johnson will be speaking to the Ukrainian parliament later today.
Wherever you're watching, wherever you're listening, it is almost exactly 7 o'clock on this Tuesday, the 3rd of May. Breakfast on GB News with Eamonn, Holmes and Isabel Webster. Thank you for your company.
Here's what's leading the news this morning. Boris Johnson will be the first world leader to address the Ukrainian parliament since the outbreak of war in February. Speaking virtually, the PM is set to praise Ukraine's resistance, as well as announce a new £300 million package of military aid.
A new government plan to give millions of people the right to buy their homes that they rent from housing associations is, it's hoped the idea will help Generation Rent.
It was a busy weekend for football. Ronnie O'Sullivan won his 7th world title, and Andy Murray didn't do too badly either in Madrid. Paul Coit will be here in the studio with a full roundup of the back pages.
So a lot of sport, and well done, Ronnie. There you are. That's a chicken or a hen. Is that a hen? What's the difference between a chicken and a hen? It's a hen, or is it a cock?
What came first, the chicken or the egg?
Yes.
For all your
well,
existential questions.
A hen lays eggs, and that's what that is. And, you know, why we're showing you pictures of hens is that if that was your business, because all the prices are going up in the shops, but
the feed.
Farmers aren't getting any more for all of this. And we're going to be talking to the farmer very, very shortly after it was announced that chicken could soon cost as much as beef. So because of those rising feed prices.
Yeah, and fuel costs and all the rest of it.
That chickens and birds are the closest what's the word I'm looking for? The closest relatives to dinosaurs that there are.
Is that right?
Yeah, because dinosaurs, if you watch Jurassic Park, like when dinosaurs where they move their heads and things. My wife moves her head like that.
Oh, stop it.
No, but she does. She does. You watch her. She's on TV. She does that.
You
like
are
a chicken. No, or a dinosaur.
Okay. I'll take
It's
your
true.
word for it. Look, this is the People's Channel. We love to hear from you throughout the programme. We try to read out as many of the emails as we possibly can, so do send them in to gbviews@gbnews.uk, or of course you can tweet us as well at gbnews.
So, top story today, Boris Johnson set to address the Ukrainian parliament, making him the first world leader to do so since the war began in February.
The PM's speech is expected to echo the words of Winston Churchill, as President Volodymyr Zelensky did when he addressed MPs at Westminster in March.
Mr. Johnson will say this is Ukraine's finest hour, an epic chapter in your national story that will be remembered and recounted for generations to come.
In addition, the PM is set to announce a new £300 million package in military aid, which will include electronic warfare equipment, a counter-battery radar system, GPS jamming equipment and thousands of night vision devices.
All of this is 3 weeks after the Prime Minister travelled unannounced to Kyiv to meet President Zelensky.
Well, let's get more on this in just a moment. We'll be speaking to... Oh, there we go.
That woman.
Mary has just walked into our shop.
So,
no problem. I'm sorry about that, Mary Dejevsky.
Sorry, your chair's a bit low there and whatever. But Mary is a columnist on foreign affairs at The Independent. Mary, what do you make of all of this? And Boris Johnson, he's really owning this campaign, isn't he?
Well, it's very, very interesting because, in a way, it's sort of surprising that nobody else has been doing this, because Volodymyr Zelensky, the Ukrainian president, has been broadcasting on Zoom for months now, direct to other people's parliaments. And this is the first time that anybody has had the idea of actually reciprocating.
Yeah.
So here we've got Boris Johnson speaking to the Ukrainian parliament, which, in terms of theatre, is a brilliant thing to do. Not least because, as I said, he's the first one to think about doing it.
And look, a lot of the focus, I suppose, will be on Boris Johnson and all this, and a lot of praise will be given to him, rightly. But in many ways, it's not really about who it is. It's about what that means and what that means to the Ukrainian people. And he is announcing an important package today, isn't he?
Well, yes, and that seems to have rubbed the UK Parliament up the wrong way, because they're saying that sort of package of new weapons for Ukraine should have been announced to the British Parliament before it's announced to the Ukrainian Parliament. And I think they have a point there. But of course, the whole point of this is theatre. And it's interesting to me that throughout the last sort of 6 weeks of the Ukrainian conflict, what we've had is gradually a developing relationship, a personal relationship between Boris Johnson and Volodymyr Zelensky. And we saw Boris Johnson went to Kiev. We saw the pair of them walking around in the deserted streets of Kiev. And between them, maybe because both of them have this sort of sense of drama and being at the centre of the action, and the way that Zelensky has sort of developed as a character and a war leader in recent weeks, that the two of them have developed this relationship, which hasn't really been, it's not been replicated with almost any other leader.
Joe Biden's looking on with lustful eyes on all of this, and he's talking about being on the ground in Kyiv as well, which would be a heck of an operation to put an American president there. So we don't know what's going to go on there, but there's no doubt about it that other leaders will be looking and saying, why didn't I think of that?
Yeah. Yes, this is true. I mean, other leaders have been to Kiev, and we saw that Boris Johnson's visit was practically immediately a day after the EU leaders had been to Kiev, and people have been that way. But the idea of broadcasting into the Kiev Parliament is, it's just a very interesting thing to do, and it demonstrates, at least for the viewers, that Ukraine is functioning as a country, that its MPs are sitting in Parliament, and that whatever's happening on the periphery, whatever Russia is throwing at Ukraine, nonetheless, this is a functioning country. That's the message.
You use that word functioning. Can I ask you, because with your vast experience, I mean, you've been a correspondent for various publications around the world, and you were in, as I understand it, Russia, right, for the Times between 1988 and 92. Now, my first visit to Moscow was around that time, about 1990. And I was shocked by what I saw, because it was a third world country.
Yes.
We're talking now about sanctions and restrictions affecting trade in Russia, that it's going to bite, it's really going to bite, and people don't know what's coming. Could you sort of recount what it was like then? And I mean, that's pretty recent history. Are we likely to see that again? And if so, now that people have been used to the ways of the West and consumerism and whatever, and I have been back a number of times to Moscow before, and it's a completely different place. How are they likely to react to these sanctions?
Well, I think at the very beginning, quite a lot of us were actually more, pessimistic's not quite the right word to use here, but we thought that the immediate impact was going to be much more than it actually has been. And I think there are several reasons for that. One of them is that the Russian economy, particularly on food and consumer goods, has become less dependent on imports in recent years. And in a way, this is perversely because of the sanctions that Western countries imposed on Russia after 2014, after Russia occupied and annexed Crimea. There were a whole load of sanctions that the West imposed on Russia. And one of the effects of that was to make them much more self-sufficient, especially in food. And it led to a colossal rise in the agriculture sector. And so if you go into a Russian supermarket in pretty much any city, not just the main cities of Moscow and St. Petersburg, if you go into mid-level cities, the actual level of consumer goods and supplies is really on a par with a lot of Western countries. And I think that at least for the time being, the sanctions aren't having the sort of effect of,
because we heard initially about queues at ATMs,
yes,
people not being able to use their phones to get onto the subway and things like that. Because
I think some of that has been adjusted to, because we were focusing on people who had contact with the West, who had foreign credit cards and bank accounts and things like that, and that's not the majority of Russians. The majority of Russians live in a Russian environment. And if they travel, they go to Turkey for a couple of weeks for their summer holiday. So going abroad is a problem, but it's it's not the same problem for the vast majority of Russians. And, you know, I've seen recently that there's been somebody who has gone to Russia, who spends time in St. Petersburg, tries to do that every year. And, you know, he's been round his local supermarkets, not having been there for 2 years because of the pandemic and now because of the war. And he's been back looking at it with the eye both of a native and of an outsider. And he's been quite surprised by the normality that's been preserved, at least so far.
So far, yeah. Mary, look, fascinating. I wish we had more time to talk to you. We're always interested in your perspective on things, so thank you very much indeed for your take there.
Thank you.
Mary Javeski is a columnist on foreign affairs for The Independent. Thank you. Thank you.
I've got a really interesting story for you, an interesting take on this cost of living crisis. It has, of course, seen prices across the board increase for many, and it was announced yesterday that chicken could soon cost as much as beef. That's thanks to rising feed prices. Well, we can speak now to one farmer who tells us how he has been impacted in all of this. That is Ryan Melbourne. Thank you for coming on the show. I see, Ryan, you're joined there by, and you might just start by clarifying if that is a chicken or a hen. How do we classify your friend there?
A hen.
A hen.
Yeah,
So
we produce eggs. So all our chickens are girls, so they're all hens, yeah.
They're all hens. OK, just talk to us then about how you are being directly affected as a chicken farmer. And I know you're new to the game, only been doing it 5 years or so. How this cost of living crisis is really biting for you?
Yeah, it's a massive problem for us. We've been here 5 years. In that time, we've had 77% increase in our feed costs. And our egg price that we get from our buyers has stayed pretty much the same in that time. So it's a massive problem. In the last day, this month alone, it's gone up 25%, our feed. So it's a huge problem for us, especially with the energy going up as well.
You talk about the energy. I suppose that's to keep your chickens warm, is it, of a winter? And indeed, I suppose the cost of fuel, transport and costs as well?
Yeah, it's actually to keep them cool. They get hot in the tens, so we have to have the fans running 24/7 to keep them cool. And then, yeah, transport costs as well are a big problem for us with the prices going up.
All farmers, my experience of farmers is that increasingly, Ryan, diversification is the thing. It's almost as if you can't rely on one source of income, in your case, eggs. Are you forced into thinking either of giving up the egg production business? Indeed, maybe your hens would be worth more as meat rather than producing eggs. So let's deal with that business first of all.
Our hens are an egg-laying breed. So there's not a lot of meat on them, to be honest. It's still eggs what they do. We are looking at diversifying. We've got different ideas, looking at what we can do. But everything comes with its cost, particularly setup costs for exploring different things. And at the moment, the hens aren't making any money, which means that we can't save up money to then diversify into other things. And yeah, next year we will definitely have at least half the amount of chickens. That's if we have any. It all depends what happens with the egg price, because that has to go up to make doing free-range eggs viable.
How would you then make up that difference in income?
Say again, sorry?
How would you make up the difference in income? If you're going to have half as many hens, where will you earn the difference?
We sell quite a lot of eggs on our farm gate, and we have a few local customers that have our eggs. So we get a better price for those eggs rather than the wholesale price from the buyers. So that will give our average eggs a slightly better price, which will help. But like I say, unless the wholesale egg price goes up now, at least you're looking at 20p a dozen, 30p a dozen at least, then we are, realistically, we're going to struggle to get chickens again, and we're going to have to look elsewhere.
That's such a shame, isn't it? I mean, Ryan, we have so many farmers that watch this programme and get in touch with us all the time, really invested in this subject. Just go into the details then exactly of how these costs break down, because I was reading feed prices yesterday went up by £70 per tonne. So how many tonnes are you using? And you know, are you actually breaking even, or, you know, give us the details?
So our price has gone up £84 a tonne overnight, and we use just under 2 tonne a day. So we're now looking at being £150 a day down, and we were breaking even before that. So unless egg price goes up, then we will be running at a loss. But we've got public finance to pay, we've got a mortgage to pay. It's cash flow, so we've got to keep going until these chickens go. But we are running at a loss realistically now, unless something happens.
And realistically, is anything going to happen in time? And I'm not, trying to be negative towards you, and I hope you can survive it, but it doesn't look like this feed crisis or this fuel crisis is easily solvable.
I don't think the feed price or fuel price is going to change now. Once we've learned, once they go up, they don't come back down again. It will need the egg price to go up, and I think realistically that needs every packer, every wholesale buyer in the country that sells to supermarkets have to raise their prices. If they don't, and they don't do it all together, then it's just not feasible. I know a lot of other poultry, egg farmers who are looking to get out of it because it's just something has got to give.
Well, that is a sorry thing to hear. But Ryan, we were looking at some eggs there, which I assume are yours, and they were speckled eggs. Are they yours? Yes. Yeah. So what?
Yeah, they're quail eggs. Yes.
I would imagine you see a lot of consumers would look at those and maybe recoil and think, "Oh, that looks a bit odd." What's the reaction, and what does a speckled egg give you?
So the speckled eggs are quail eggs. We have some quail that we rear for eggs. They're actually, they have massive health benefits, quail eggs, but a lot of supermarkets charge a lot of money for them. So if they brought the price down on quail eggs, it's actually a massive health benefit. In Japan, they eat quail eggs as where we used to have milk in the mornings at primary school when we were younger. They have quail eggs every day, and there's a huge health benefit for that. Yeah.
Fantastic little bit of info there.
Yeah.
I like an egg for breakfast, a hard-boiled egg, just, as a substitute for sort of unhealthy things like bread.
But I'll tell you something else, Ryan, while we're on the subject of interesting little things. Your hen there is exactly like the hen, chicken, cock, I don't know what it is, that is on the front of a Kellogg's cornflakes box. Have you ever noticed that? It's the same colouring.
Yeah, it's just slightly more green on the Kellogg's one, I think. But yeah, they're lovely.
Do you know what the Kellogg's one is called?
Do you know Say again, sorry?
Do you know what name the Kellogg's one is called?
I can't remember, to be honest. I remember Tony the Tiger, but I can't remember the Kellogg's one.
No, I don't remember.
Cornelius.
Cornelius?
Yes.
And what's your hen called, Ryan?
This one's Dave.
Dave
and
it's not
Ryan.
quite as fancy.
Well, Dave and Ryan, thank you both very, very much indeed. Ryan, we wish you all the best, mate.
Yeah.
It's a tough gig for you, and it's a big adventure for you too, and we just hope it gets better. But, it's just to say that, Ryan's a supplier, you're a consumer watching and listening about this. Difficult for both of you, two sides of the story there. Thanks very much indeed, Ryan.
Sure, thanks very much.
And Dave. Bye.
Bye, Dave.
Thank you. Bye, Dave.
Yeah. So there you are.
Dear, I do like a quail's egg. I've been inspired now,
They're
I think, for
tiny,
breakfast.
though,
They're tiny wee, which is
Yeah.
probably extra healthy as well.
They're like Cadbury's eggs.
Like a little mini egg.
A mini egg at Easter, aren't they?
Yeah, they are.
They're
the real
speckled
deal.
as well.
Yeah, exactly.
Speckles as well. 17 minutes past the hour. The government's been threatened with legal action over unreasonable delays in processing hundreds of Ukrainian visa applications. Potential sponsors under the Homes for Ukraine scheme says putting refugees at risk.
The parents of Madeleine McCann have marked the 15th anniversary of her disappearance with a quote from Winnie the Pooh, posted on the Find Madeleine Facebook page alongside an image of Pooh and his friend Piglet. It says, "The most important thing is, even if we're apart, I'll always be with you."
At least 300 people were intercepted on 9 small boats in the English Channel. This was yesterday. Crossings began again on Sunday after 11 days of strong winds and choppy seas.
And a parade of stars have celebrated American fashion at the annual Met Gala in New York. This year's guests were told to dress in gilded glamour for the annual fundraiser for the Metropolitan Museum of Art.
Well, I didn't see a bit of gilded glamour there. So if you and I were going to the Met Ball, you would be up to high dough getting gilded.
100%.
Gilded.
And we're going to be talking to Stephanie Tetchy at about 9:20 about the best dress and the worst dress. But if you haven't had a chance to look it up yet, and we'll definitely make sure we show you, Kendall Jenner stole the show for me.
Was she gilded?
Stunning gilded dress. Yeah, it was a black, long, sweeping train down the stairs. I mean, she's stunning anyway. She could wear anything.
Well, what's the point of being gilded when all those pictures, none of them were gilded?
Well, what do you think of when you think of gilded?
Gold.
Oh, I see. Oh, Cara Delevingne nailed that then.
Did she?
Yeah, she painted herself gold and that was all she wore on her top half.
Enough said. Well, after a wonderful birthday for Princess Charlotte yesterday, it's been revealed that her parents could be moving the family closer to the Queen.
Yeah, the Duke and Duchess of Cambridge are said to be keen on moving to Adelaide Cottage, which is only 10 minutes from Windsor Castle.
Now, after this amazing story that an intruder was allowed to spend the night, I'm not really sure, with royal guardsmen in a barracks in the grounds of Windsor.
Yeah, amazing headline on this. The fail of the century. I just thought that was so clever.
Yeah.
I enjoyed that.
So let's get the view now of royal commentator Rafe Hadel Mancu on this. Tell us this story.
Right, well, it's quite an amazing story, actually. This didn't happen at Windsor Castle, it should be said. This was the Victoria Barracks of the Coldstream Guards, who do the ceremonial functions, and it's outside of the grounds, it's about 200 yards away, but it's still a shocking breach of security. A pure fantasist Walter Mitty character rocked up, said that he was a friend of the Padre for the soldiers, was invited in, and after a while had dinner and got into some good old boozy tales about alleged activities in Iraq and was offered a bed for the night, amazingly. And it wasn't until the next morning, so 16 hours this went on before it was discovered. It's just the latest of a long line of intrusions into the Windsor estate recently, so it's time for a big shake-up.
Yeah, Her Majesty wasn't at the castle at the time. She was still at Sandringham for her Easter break, but she was due back imminently. And, of course, lots of questions would be asked about how this happened, not least when apparently suspicions were beginning to be roused. Some of the things he was saying sounded like tall tales. He talked about being an ejector seat test pilot, which doesn't really ring true, and having been awarded medals and all the rest of it from active service. The royal family will be, rightly concerned by this.
They're very concerned by this. It's just the latest, as I said, in a long line of incidents, and it also follows up from a shake-up of their protection that happened over Christmas. The new head of protection command of the Metropolitan Police didn't like the fact that the Royal Protection Service were too cliquey. These were strong relationships the Royals had with their protection officers, which they really valued, and the idea was this really was a job almost for life, and the Metropolitan Police don't want that, and so they've shaken things up, and that's destroyed a lot of the trust and the bond between the protection officers and the Royals.
Maybe Harry had a point. Maybe he did need to check if the Queen had the right people around her.
Well...
that probably wasn't what he meant, but it does make you wonder. I don't think that's what he meant. It's not what he meant, but it does make you wonder.
Well, I think, when it comes to proper royal occasions and royal visits, there is an increased security presence. And, and in terms of threats to Prince Harry, I mean, our intelligence services will always offer him the strongest protection if there was a real threat to him.
OK.
Talking about Harry, what is the latest with Netflix? They're being followed by Netflix cameras, but some of their business deals seem to be falling through.
Yes, well, it's a complete disaster for Harry and Meghan and Archwell Productions, their Netflix company, which has had the catastrophic news that Pearl, its flagship production, which was a animated series executively produced by Elton John and David Furnish, is to be axed. As you know, Netflix having big problems with a dip in subscriber numbers, falling revenues, plummeting share price, having spent too much on other programs, is cutting back, particularly on animated series. And so whilst Prince Harry's Invictus documentary is carrying on, there is nothing for Meghan to show for it, and it's really calling into question whether they can walk the walk. They're good at talking the talk. They signed up to Spotify, but they've only produced one podcast so far. The Netflix deal has been over for over a year now, and there's very little to show for it, and it looks as if, apart from moaning about the royals, there's not much that they're able to do.
What about this story that they're sort of squabbling over so-called Adelaide Cottage? I hadn't heard of it, I must admit. We heard so much about Frogmore Cottage and whether or not William and Kate were going to be living there, which was obviously given to Harry and Meghan, but now is lived in by... is it Beatrice or Eugenie?
That's right.
One of those two. So tell us about Adelaide Cottage and who is squabbling over that.
Yes, well, there's been rumours for quite a while now that the Cambridges wanted to move closer to the Queen. Only 10 minutes walk away from Windsor Castle is this new Adelaide Cottage. It's also close to the Middletons, so it's good for the grandparents on the mother's side too. And we know that they've been scouting out local schools in the area. Adelaide Cottage has just been renovated, so it makes the most sense for them to go there. There's not much cost involved in that. Frogmore would require, which is the much more grand property there, would require a lot more refurbishment. refurbishment. And there's also an option of Royal Lodge, which is a 31-room mansion. But unfortunately, there's an incumbent there already by the name of Prince Andrew, who doesn't seem very keen to relinquish that. Adelaide Cottage has been a grace and favour residence for about 80 years. The most famous resident was Group Captain Peter Townsend, Princess Margaret's one-time paramour. Yes, it seems as if these plans are well underway and they really want to start a new life in a new home. It's a nice luxury to be in, to have a choice of so many properties.
Well, that's the Royal Roundup for today. Rafe, thank you very much indeed. Always good to hear from you, my friend.
Stay with us. We're going to take a quick break. After that, Paul Coyte will be in the studio taking us through the back pages. But first of all, here's your Tuesday forecast.
Looking ahead to today's weather, and the UK is looking rather cloudy in most areas this morning with some patchy rain in places. Let's take a look at the details. By the middle of the day, some brighter weather will be developing across the southwest of England, although this is likely to spark off a scattering of sharp showers. The southeast is likely to remain under a thicker blanket of cloud, and although most places look dry, the odd spot of drizzle is possible. Heading across to Wales, and here cloud will be lifting and thinning to give some sunshine, although as it warms up, a few showers will break out. The Midlands will continue to see rather a lot of cloud, giving the odd patch of light rain, and as a result, the temperature will be pegged back a little bit too. It'll feel quite chilly across parts of northeast England, as cloudy skies and some local drizzle will be combined with a cool, albeit gentle breeze blowing in off the North Sea. Most of Scotland will be shrouded in a blanket of cloud as well, and there'll be a bit of an east to west split in temperature, with the highest values towards the west. Little sunshine is likely across Northern Ireland around lunchtime, and there'll be a few showers, especially in the east. Nonetheless, temperatures will be around the early May average. Some heavier showers will develop across Wales and the southwest this afternoon, and rain will arrive in the northwest this evening. And that's how the weather is shaping up for the rest of the day.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debate, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
On radio, they call it the drive time slot, 4 p.m. until 6 p.m. as listeners head home. It's that part of the schedule when the dust of the day's events begin to clarify, and we try to make sense of it for you. Brazier is drive time for radio and TV. It's fast, it's punchy, it's opinionated, there's a Brazier angle and a little bit of levity.
That's the question. That's two questions, actually.
That's Brazier, Monday to Thursday, 4 till 6 on GB News.
Hello, I'm Patrick Christie's.
And I'm Mercy Moroki.
Make sure that you join us Monday to Thursday, 10 a.m. until midday, right here on GB News for To The Point.
We're not afraid to talk about the topics that matter to you, or the big topics that always matter.
We cover absolutely everything, from the breaking political stories of the day to law and order, what's going on in the channel. We're not afraid to hold people to account.
We always make sure we include your views on our show.
Indeed, if you're thinking it, you can guarantee that we're saying it. So make sure you join the conversation with us, 10 a.m. until midday, Monday to Thursday, for To The Point on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Do you know, just looking, the back pages become the front pages today. Daily Telegraph, Ronnie O'Sullivan. There he is. He wins the World Snooker title again. And it is a record win. It is a record win. Paul Coyte going to tell you more on this.
Yes, 7 times. Now, 7 times world champion. And the thing is, it's been spread out across probably 2 or 3 decades, because he's been playing since he was really young. Stephen Hendry had the record, and there was Steve Davis just below there. So he beat Judd Trump yesterday. I mean, we were talking yesterday, weren't we, saying that there's a good chance that this wouldn't even go to the evening. But then it did, and Judd Trump won 6 frames, then to take it into the evening session. But then Ronnie O'Sullivan won it 18-13 in the end. I mean, this guy's unbelievable.
He is unbelievable. He's a maverick and such an entertainer. And it's interesting that he's the oldest player to have won the World Cup.
Do you know who formerly the oldest?
Would have been Cliff Thorburn?
No.
No.
Think old.
Dennis?
No. I think we might have a picture, because the thing is, he was 45 at the time when he won it. I don't know where there we are. Look, there he is. That's Perry Mons on the left.
Ray Reardon.
The great Ray Reardon. Now, would you put Ray Reardon there as being younger than Ronnie O'Sullivan is now?
Definitely not.
No.
It's interesting. You're right. When you were young and you were watching snooker players, you don't put Ronnie O'Sullivan as being an old man.
No, of course you don't.
But there he is. I mean, he's incredible. Really, what a gift this man has. And he now shares 7 wins with Stephen Hendry.
Yep, so he's going to... It looks like there's been times in his career where he thought, you know what, I'm just going to pull the plug on it. I'm not going to play anymore. But now he's going to be going for 8. I'm sure, whether it actually means stuff to him. There's so many sports people I've spoken to over the years. For example, like Mark Cavendish. I spoke to Mark Cavendish recently about the Tour de France. And he was saying, well, the 34 wins that I share with Eddie Merckx, it doesn't really mean that much to me. I find that very difficult to believe when it comes to sports people, because they have that will to win. So surely there's going to be Ronnie O'Sullivan's going to think, you know what, I want that record out.
He wants that
But he was amazing, so world champion again.
Look, a lot of football last night. Where do you want to get him? Premier League?
You know what? Should we do your Manchester United? Because at least you got a win yesterday. 3-0. It could be too little too late. Ralph Rangnick there, and
it is
the last game at Old Trafford. There we are, 3-0. Can't argue with that. But it is the end of Ralph Rangnick. That's the end of his term as manager there. And certainly, look, there was that sign. See, walk out on 73 minutes with Glazers out. But I don't know whether once the second and the third goal went in, whether they actually did go out and whether they actually stuck around, because, you know, it's almost like they've come into form very, very late. But there's also stuff that I've seen of fans
they haven't
singing.
come into form. They've won 1 game. It's hardly...
I tell you what, that's coming into form, is it? 3-0 against Brentford? We could only manage 0-0.
Look, all I saw last night was the parade to thank the fans. It was United's last home game last night. And they walked around, and I just thought, he'll not be there next year. He's going to be sold. It was just like a goodbye, I think, from a lot of them.
You know what? You can often tell from the wave. You know, you can tell from the wave, or how long they linger at the end to say goodbye, etc., etc. Did they have the usual with the shirts with the kid with Daddy written on the back? You know, it's all the usual things they do.
It's all there.
But anyway, it's a good win. Rangnick, whether he goes upstairs, that's obviously the plan, that he goes upstairs. And then you've got Erik ten Hag's going to come in from Ajax, who probably is going to have a clean sweep and then try and sort the whole lot out.
Clean sweep, except I look at Cristiano and I think, how could you?
I agree.
How could you get rid of him? Not only that, I would make him captain.
I agree.
That's number 1. And I might even make him manager.
Yeah.
You know, because he's had more experience than anybody else. But I just wonder further down the line if he will be a Manchester United manager.
It would make sense, wouldn't it? Because whether this man's going to work, I don't know. There's just been so many different managers have been tried, going back to David Moyes, and then we continue. Well, anyway, whether it's going to work out, I don't know.
It is what it is.
I think probably Cristiano Ronaldo, you're right, captain, manager, maybe even deputy in charge of the charity.
Well, look, let's talk about Liverpool. This is amazing. They're ahead 2-0 against Villarreal. Second leg of this is tonight. They're still on for the quadruple.
They should be. They should win tonight. It shouldn't be a problem tonight. Villarreal, though, this is a really interesting club. This is not known as one of the big Spanish clubs. They're all in yellow. They have the Yellow Submarine. And actually, I'll tell you about they sing Yellow Submarine, but in Spanish. It came about...
Can you sing that for us?
I did have the words in Spanish. It's it's Amarillo, es al Villarreal. But sung to the tune of Yellow Submarine. I did try it, but it really didn't work out so well. So I decided to save you. But they had this guy that back in '68, when the song came out, he actually walked into the stand with a little record player, because that was the way they do it in the day, put it on the record, played it, and then it became the theme ever since, because they wear Yellow Submarine, that's their crowd. But anyway, they're not doing very well in La Liga, but in Europe, they won the Europa League last year under Unai Emery. Don't count them out. I think Liverpool are going to be fine, but don't take for granted what they could actually manage, because they've already knocked out Juventus, knocked out Bayern Munich.
Just before we go, congratulations to Fulham clinching the championship. Not only clinching it in style. In a real old-fashioned fixture. When I saw that, Fulham, Luton, harks back to the 70s.
It does, doesn't it?
But I'm talking about 7.
7, and Luton are pushing for the playoffs. So to beat 7 by Fulham,
7-0.
they've scored over 100 goals.
Incredible.
Fulham this year, and there was a guy I was reading about this. There was a guy that actually a Fulham fan. There's always one that has a bet, and he had a bet with £5 that Fulham would score over 100 goals this year, and he ended up with £6,000. So whether he's happy with that,
well
I
done,
should have put a tenner on it. Well done, Fulham.
Paul, appreciate it. Thank you very much indeed.
We're going to take a quick break, but find out after the break why tech is almost as harmful to the planet as flying. Did you know that?
Do I care?
You should do. People talk about trying to cut down on flying to save the planet. Maybe we need to use less tech. We'll be discussing
so every time we buy a gadget or whatever it is, there's a price to pay.
There's a carbon footprint, yeah.
OK, more depression after this.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debates, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
On radio, they call it the drive time slot, 4 p.m. until 6 p.m. as listeners head home. It's that part of the schedule when the dust of the day's events begin to clarify, and we try to make sense of it for you. Brazier is drive time for radio and TV. It's fast, it's punchy, it's opinionated, there's a Brazier angle and a little bit of levity.
That's the question. That's 2 questions, actually.
That's Brazier, Monday to Thursday, 4 till 6 on GB News.
Hello, I'm Patrick Christie's.
And I'm Mercy Moroki.
Make sure that you join us Monday to Thursday, 10 a.m. until midday, right here on GB News for To The Point.
We're not afraid to talk about the topics that matter to you, or the big topics that always matter.
We cover absolutely everything, from the breaking political stories of the day to law and order, what's going on in the channel. We're not afraid to hold people to account.
We always make sure we include your views on our show.
Indeed, if you're thinking it, you can guarantee that we're saying it. So make sure you join the conversation with us, 10 a.m. until midday, Monday to Thursday for To The Point on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
OK, with the time at 7:37, we'll bring you up to date on the latest headlines. Russian forces have resumed shelling the Mariupol steel plant after just several dozen civilians were evacuated. The Azovstal complex remains the last stronghold of Ukrainian forces in the city, with many soldiers and civilians still hiding inside.
Post office workers are striking today. This is a dispute over pay. The Communication Workers Union says it's a 2021 pay freeze and exceptionally poor offer of a 2% increase from April this year. Your views welcome.
A genetic test to spot a rare form of eye cancer in babies in the womb is being rolled out across the NHS for families at risk. The test identifies those with retinoblastoma and is likely to identify around 50 cases every year in England.
Sir Billy Connolly is being honoured with a BAFTA Television Fellowship. The 79-year-old comedian, also known as the Big Yin, will be celebrated on Sunday for a career spanning more than 5 decades.
OK, time to go through your morning papers again. This morning we're joined by Kevin Craig, who's a PR expert, and environmental campaigner Amy Cameron. Amy, let's start with you and this ongoing so-called Westminster row. This is on page 5 of The Guardian. Calls for compulsory MP training to tackle the sexist culture. I mean, is that really necessary?
Yes. It's obviously, yeah.
But yeah, after weeks of these sort of sleaze and scandal allegations and information from Westminster, this is a call for compulsory training, which I totally agree with you, Isabel, is absolutely bleak that is necessary, but necessary it clearly is. There's a variety of calls being put forward to try to tackle what is clearly a extremely problematic culture within Westminster, not just for MPs, but for the multitude of staff for whom that is their 9-to-5 workplace and for whom it's clearly a place that does not feel safe and feels incredibly disrespectful. I think implementing things like staff training, changing the employment contracts so that your employer is not just the MP that you work for, all feels, I think, necessary and useful. But I think we can't shy away from the fact that under Boris Johnson, we have a leader who demonstrates total contempt for basic ethical standards and a culture of impunity has been propagated within Westminster. If you have a Prime Minister who repeatedly defends his own ministers against claims of bullying, against claims of inappropriate lobbying, then that feeds this culture where people feel invincible.
Yes. Well, Boris Johnson was really robust in his critique of the people who were claiming that Angela Rayner was trying to distract him with some sort of basic instinct stunt. He spoke out about that. There has, for the last 3 years, been this new system whereby people can lodge complaints in a kind of attempt to clean up Westminster. It's being used. You could argue that we're seeing an increase in these sorts of stories, but that could just be that it's being reported and handled better now.
Yeah, I think there's definitely an element of that. We have to hope that what we're seeing here is more women within the House of Commons, be those MPs or staffers, feeling confident in coming forward. And I think the changes that were implemented after the last scandal, after the Westminster scandal, have clearly helped.
Yeah.
I do think we could see calls for more investigators. Too many people report that they don't bother bringing forward complaints because it takes too long.
Yeah.
It's quite a demeaning process. We see echoes of what we see in the justice system more generally. So yes, I think there are practical steps which can be taken. And I was pleased to see Boris Johnson come out so robustly against that ludicrous Angela Rayner story. But I still think there is this culture of impunity operating within Westminster where...
And I think, Amy, I think where it backs up what you say there is you just have to look at other workplaces. If you work in a school or a bank or indeed here, I mean, would you be aware of sexual pesting stories in here? Answer no.
In my career, I've definitely experienced it within the industry.
But that's not what I asked you. In this, there are certain working environments where you say, no, it doesn't seem to exist.
No, it gets dealt with.
And one of the reasons I think it doesn't exist is that broadcast in general probably have more female employees than male.
Yeah, potentially. But just going back to Westminster and this culture of impunity, I mean, Neil Parish has resigned. He said he got caught and he has resigned.
Well,
so it's not as if he's going off scot-free.
Yeah, and I'm glad you mentioned that, Isabel, because it's fine as the story that Amy's picked out in The Guardian calls for compulsory MP training. But really, hang on. It doesn't matter what training you bring in, you cannot legislate for the fact that somebody thought it was acceptable to watch pornography in the House of Commons chamber. And if you have to train human beings to understand that that's not right, that's all a bit, woeful. And I think you've seen it recently with bullying judgments against the former Speaker, John Bercow. I think Parliament is cleaning up its act. And I'll tell you the biggest thing you could do in Westminster to clean this all up is cut down on the drinking culture. We've talked about it on this channel.
Kwasi Kwarteng came out and said at the weekend, come on, that's a bit, bit po-faced to make sure that everyone has to be dry. I mean, there's plenty of people who can work long hours.
Yes,
there's
there
plenty
are,
of people who can drink responsibly.
I'm telling you, Kevin, the television industry, if you go back to the 1980s, every TV company, BBC and ITV, had a bar, right? Yeah. And if they didn't have a bar, they had a bar right outside the front door. And drink was part of the culture. Yeah. Now, I can sit and recount. I'm OK with that. I'm a non-drinker, but I was OK with how people relaxed. I also watched people drunk, and I knew their habits, drunk in the newsroom, while people like me were expected to pull up the slack and work while the rest of them were sleeping it off.
Correct.
Or whatever. So it was there. They took it out of television. You won't even be aware of it.
No.
So you
But
joined TV.
my response to that
my
is...
point is, you take it out, you get rid of the problem.
No, I think you're just treating everybody like children. I mean, if people can't drink responsibly, take them out of the
honestly,
situation.
booze-
Come on, are we really saying we have to have a dry parliament?
No, but not dry, but the booze.
Well, why shouldn't you have a dry parliament?
Well, you have lots of functions. Perhaps people come in to get awards or whatever. They go and go.
Well, you set up a function for that. I don't really
but
understand.
if you're saying there's no drinks allowed anywhere in Parliament,
No, you're not. You're saying that if a function comes in, you set up for the function. That is a wholly different thing. Or you go outside to drink. But I think it's rather weird in today's society that you have a workplace that has got 4, 5, 6 bars.
But it's not a normal workplace. It's not a 9-to-5 office. It's somewhere where people are voting up until late in the night.
Until they start feeling your bum.
That makes it worse.
Yeah, so that's basically what they're doing.
It's so unhealthy to have so much cheap alcohol available to people under pressure. And a minister came out and said it the other day in response. And I know, as Amy just said, Neil Parish wasn't drunk when he did what he did. But the fact is, we're talking about how to make Parliament better. There's too much cheap booze, too easily available, and it serves none of us.
OK, if we can't act responsibly, and we'll be puritanical about it all. Anyway, we'll agree to disagree. Well, I just don't understand why we have to treat everyone... Because one person or however many people behave like children, we all have to...
business. Name me another business.
Plenty of places have bars. People have sleep pods at work now. People have...
And they have bars at work.
Foosball. Yeah, bars. Foosballs. Foosball tables.
Working spaces.
Our old business, Sky News, had a bar up in the loft.
I don't disagree that it's something we could clamp down on. I do think it's an overly narrow view of the problem, because so many of these incidents take place during the working day when, I mean, I'm hoping against hope the staff are not drunk at that point and the MPs are not drunk at that point. I do think that the culture of drinking in Westminster is likely problematic. I don't think that's the entire story, though, and I think much more needs to be done to root out this sense of power that MPs appear to have, and this sense that they are untouchable, and that is fed through the way they're dealt with.
I think that most MPs go into it with the right intentions. It's in many ways...
I do agree most do. I agree most do, but I think there is, unfortunately, a culture within which this sort of behaviour is allowed to carry on, whether it's bullying, sexual harassment, whatever.
They're like news presenters. They get a bad rap sometimes, and it's not fair.
It's not fair. I tell you this, though. They're away from home, practically all of them. They work long hours. I'm not against MPs, and I do think they should be paid more, and I think they should be respected more. And I think they'd make a stupid mistake of making too many of the high-powered ones available to minor people like myself to interview them. It should be the days of old where you restricted who got to interview who. The Prime Minister's available to too many people on too many shows, and it doesn't score well. But they live away from home, they do long unsociable hours, temptation is there.
Right, so if people can't be trusted to work away from home, in this day and age, if these MPs have to behave inappropriately, then make them stay at home and zoom in if that's the world we live in. I just don't understand why we have to accommodate come down to the lowest bar. I just don't get it.
But it's not about that. It's about not facilitating or increasing the likelihood. You don't, and I know it's different. They are passing laws, right? One of the most important things you can do in society. I know it's different. We don't have bars in hospitals. Now, I know that, but it's serious jobs. Why is there booze around? Paid for, subsidised by the state.
And you can have a glass of wine or whatever it is with your lunch. There's nobody saying you shouldn't do that. There are plenty of restaurants and whatever. But within reason, it's not a pub. It's not a pub, and it should be a debating chamber first and not a pub. But there we go. That's it. But
Let us know your
you actually haven't visited. You haven't been inside.
I haven't been inside for all my opinions, but...
When you see inside and you see somebody's walking behind us, you sashay up the corridor.
I've been into the Lords. I've not been into the Commons, believe it or not.
Breathing all round you. Yeah? Maybe you'll speak differently.
Maybe,
anyway.
yeah.
Are we out of time then on the papers? We are.
We're just getting going. We're just having a little barney. We were enjoying ourselves.
Right, you
Straight to the bar then,
We only got through 2 stories.
Come back in about 40 minutes' time. We'll do some more. We'll do another 2. Local council elections, OK, they're all over the place. They're going to happen on Thursday. In Scotland, SNP expected to dominate again. Labour and the Conservatives battling it out for the remaining seats.
Yeah, our Scotland reporter David Donaldson's been to East Lothian to get a sense of what the issues are like there and what they'd like to see improved.
Bass Rock, one of the most scenic views off the East Lothian coast, which is famous for top-class golf courses. The historic town of Dunbar is situated 30 miles east of Edinburgh and has a population of just over 10,000. So, what issues do people there want to see addressed?
We have a big lack of small industrial units. It's really strangling business. We have a huge amount of holiday homes that we need to somehow get the holiday homes taxed so they get the prices down for local people so local youth can actually stay in the area.
The coronavirus and that, just at its end there, that they, you know, with the wearing the face masks and that, could have been, you know, like brought in line with what was happening in England and all the rest of it, you know, and it seemed to be that Nicola Sturgeon just seemed to keep it going and going and going, and we were the last people to, you know, lose a face mask.
That's what the people of Dunbar are looking for, but just along the motorway is the market town of Haddington. It was once the fourth largest town in Scotland in the high Middle Ages and is steeped in agricultural history. These local people told me what action they want to see taken by councillors.
I would like to see an improvement in the high streets, in just about every town, I think, in East Lothian. Big support for that. Also with the roads, that would be, I've just realised I've got a rip in my tyre from a pothole, I imagine. Support for the NHS, because actually I'm a retired nurse and I know it's been pretty awful for them. And I suppose schools as well, teachers. I've got grandchildren, so just like, although lots of support for them.
What I'd like to see happen is probably more youth centres in the town. When I was younger, we used to go to a youth centre. When I was younger, gets the kids off the street to cause a mischief. I'd like to see that more happening again in the near future. That's what I'd like to see more happening.
Well, I've been to Dunbar and Haddington trying to find out what local people want to see happen in the East Lothian Council elections. We've seen a wide range of views, really. Some people trying to get young people better onto the property ladder. Also young people in terms of youth clubs as well, get youth clubs for them to try and help them out. We've seen some people disenchanted with the SNP as well with regards to wearing face masks. So quite a lot of different things here. We'll find out more, of course, as we go to the polls, and eventually we'll find out afterwards what sort of action is going to be taken on the issues that really affect the people of East Lothian. David Donaldson, GB News.
Thank you, David. Thank you very much indeed. What matters to you in terms of these elections? Please do let us know there, because we were seeing earlier that whatever the problems are with these local elections, they were the same problems the last time. What has changed? What improves? GB Views at gbnews.uk or tweet at GB News.
Now, we're going to be talking about tech now. New figures have revealed that most British people are completely unaware that buying new gadgets has a significant impact on carbon emissions.
What, are you stupid? I mean, that sort of thing. Everything has a price. If you buy a new computer, you've got to say what happens to the old one.
Am I stupid? British people,
no,
not just me.
I'm saying I'm talking to those people.
Why are you?
Are you stupid? Of course, people. I mean, you have to think this, but it's a throwaway society.
Yeah, definitely.
So here's the big statistics. Air travel contributes to 3% of global carbon emissions, right? But the production and creation of new computers, new phones, etc., is 2%.
Oh.
Here's Alan Stevens. He's a technology expert.
Indeed.
Alan, what's the answer?
Well, the answer, there's several things. I mean, there's the manufacturers that don't need to issue new products so often as they do, and there's us as consumers. We don't need to upgrade as often as we do.
But you say that, but every advert, every magazine advert, every television advert, the pressure is get the new phone, get the new computer, get the new this, and you know, kids especially will feel left out if they haven't got the latest devices.
Well, of course you have. Every 2 years at the end of your contract or whatever it is, there's an upgrade and it's a free upgrade and that sort of thing. But do we really need it? And
no,
the answer, we don't.
Well, don't we? Because I think a lot of things aren't built to last anymore. They're built to be obsolete, and they start to degrade and not work deliberately by the manufacturers.
That's a very good point, Isabel. I mean, the batteries, for example, in mobile phones and tablets, they degrade very quickly and you can't replace them, which is crazy. You'd think if they just need a battery replacement, it should be a simple, straightforward fix.
Is that a deliberate thing, do you think?
Of course it is.
Yeah.
Of course it is.
You see, the other thing gets me, you change your phone, for instance, you need a different type of charger. And I just think, why isn't a standard charger that just, you know, every time, so you can change the phone, but you don't need to change the charger and throw away the charger?
You're right. I mean, it's so you can't keep your old phone. It's, you know, it's planned obsolescence, as they used to call it. You know, the fact is, you're being persuaded to buy new things, get new things all the time. It's a quarter of a tonne of fossil fuel to make a phone. You know, it's a huge group.
And I suppose carbon emissions from aviation and from tech are probably quite closely linked. If you think about batteries, often, but I mean, cause and effect. Like a lot of carbon emissions from aviation are caused by tech being flown around the world from places like China, where it's being developed. Is there a way for people to shop for tech in a sort of green way, in a sort of consumer-conscious way?
There is. I mean, one thing is, do you need to upgrade your phone every couple of years, or however often it is? And the chances are you don't use all the features on a phone anyway, and you don't need a screen that's a few centimetres bigger or a battery that charges. Well, you might if you want to. But the thing is, we can just think, we can be careful about how we use our equipment. The manufacturers can also make it easier to repair things, to replace things, so that we actually keep things a lot longer. We don't need things every 2 years.
Yeah, I mean, that's absolutely key, isn't it? Repairing things and making do and mending, as we used to say, has really gone out of fashion. That, I suppose, applies right across the board, not just to tech.
Because you used to have daddies and uncles and brothers that could do that sort of thing, and now men are useless. You know, I don't need to tell you.
We need a repair shop for technology. That's what we need. We need a repair shop for technology, not fixing old clocks and so on.
Is that why that programme is so popular, the repair shop? Because people just love life being breathed into old objects.
Well, there's a programme idea for you. Don't pitch that. The repair shop.
It is a great programme. It is.
So what can be done then to raise awareness of this issue? I mean, do you think that it's something that people are going to start offsetting, perhaps, their tech?
You could. I mean, people can offset against their tech. The thing is, it's making people aware. You know, it's what we're doing right now. We're making people aware of the fact that technology, tablets and phones and so on, does have a huge impact on the environment. People will stop air travel, but they won't even think about their mobile phone.
Well, there you go. Alan Stevens with his take on how to be conscious and what's the word I'm looking for?
There's nothing we can do. I mean, I'm quite depressed after listening to you because I don't feel there's anything we can do about it.
Well, you can just not change your phone so often.
Not change your phone, and when you do change it, donate it to your local school because they need a lot of tech. That's certainly what happens with us. Alan, lovely to have you in the studio. Thank you very much. Talking about aviation and flights, we've been asking you this morning to get in touch with any stories that you might have about things that have gone wrong on long-haul flights, because Qantas has announced that they're doing 20-hour flights from Sydney to London from 2025. So we want to know from you, would you be up for that, or does it scare you a little bit? Is that safe? Let us know your thoughts. gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Here are my thoughts.
Yeah.
Don't go breaking my heart. Baby, I couldn't if I tried.
Yeah.
If I get restless, you're by my side. Ooh, and nobody knows it, nobody knows. So we have got 1976 was the year. That was in the charts #1 with Elton John and, as we used to say in Belfast, Kinky D.
No. You said it.
Kinky, don't let me say that today.
No, don't.
Kiki,
You're saying it all morning.
Kiki's here live in the studio just after 9 o'clock this morning and celebrating a massive amount of time in show business. She's got new music and we're going to have a rendition. We're going to have
an
a play of that. Yeah, an acoustic after 9 o'clock this morning. So come back for that and we'll see you after the break.
Looking ahead to today's weather, and the UK is looking rather cloudy in most areas this morning with some patchy rain in places. Let's take a look at the details. By the middle of the day, some brighter weather will be developing across the southwest of England, although this is likely to spark off a scattering of sharp showers. The southeast is likely to remain under a thicker blanket of cloud, and although most places look dry, the odd spot of drizzle is possible. Heading across to Wales, and here cloud will be lifting and thinning to give some sunshine, although as it warms up, a few showers will break out. The Midlands will continue to see rather a lot of cloud, giving the odd patch of light rain, and as a result, the temperature will be pegged back a little bit too. It'll feel quite chilly across parts of northeast England, as cloudy skies and some local drizzle will be combined with a cool, albeit gentle breeze blowing in off the North Sea. Most of Scotland will be shrouded in a blanket of cloud as well, and there'll be a bit of an east to west split in temperature, with the highest values towards the west. Little sunshine is likely across Northern Ireland around lunchtime, and there'll be a few showers, especially in the east. Nonetheless, temperatures will be around the early May average. Some heavier showers will develop across Wales and the southwest this afternoon, and rain will arrive in the northwest this evening. And that's how the weather is shaping up for the rest of the day.
Tonight on GB News. At 6, it's Deebs & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Mark Stein. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debates, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
On radio, they call it the drive time slot, 4 p.m. until 6 p.m. as listeners head home. It's that part of the schedule when the dust of the day's events begin to clarify, and we try to make sense of it for you. Brazier is drive time for radio and TV. It's fast, it's punchy, it's opinionated, there's a Brazier angle and a little bit of levity.
That's the question. That's two questions, actually.
That's Brazier, Monday to Thursday, 4 till 6 on GB News.
Hello, I'm Patrick Christie's.
And I'm Mercy Moroki.
Make sure that you join us Monday to Thursday, 10 a.m. until midday, right here on GB News for To The Point.
We're not afraid to talk about the topics that matter to you, or the big topics that always matter.
We cover absolutely everything, from the breaking political stories of the day to law and order, what's going on in the channel. We're not afraid to hold people to account.
We always make sure we include your views on our show.
Indeed, if you're thinking it, you can guarantee that we're saying it. So make sure you join the conversation with us, 10 a.m. until midday, Monday to Thursday for To The Point on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Ukraine's finest hour. The words Boris Johnson will be speaking to the Ukrainian parliament later today.
Good morning. It's 8 o'clock on Tuesday, the 3rd of May. This is Breakfast on GB News with Eamonn and Isabel.
Thanks for your company. Thanks for tuning in, whether it's by television, radio or online. Leading the news this morning, Boris Johnson will be the first world leader to address the Ukrainian parliament since the outbreak of the war in February.
Speaking virtually, the PM is set to praise Ukraine's resistance, as well as announce a new package of £300 million of military aid.
P&O Ferries is to resume cross-channel passenger sailings for the first time since the company sacked nearly 800 staff 7 weeks ago. We'll be reporting on that.
Could the high street be soon a thing of the past? John Lewis seems to think so. They're recruiting more than 150 roles to help grow their online offering.
And in Health Matters, it's Skin Cancer Awareness Month. To help give advice about what exactly to look out for, we're going to have the NHS Dr. Frankie Jackson-Spence here in the studio.
And remember, this is the People's Channel, so we love to hear from you throughout the programme. Get in touch about any of our discussions this morning. You can email us gbviews@gbnews.uk, or you can tweet us at gbnews.
Yeah, and you've been doing just that. On the subject of doctors, Maureen, good morning to you. My GP practice is amazing, which is lovely to hear, bearing in mind the pressure these places are under. They were so good during the lockdown. We've never had an issue getting to see our GP when we need to. We'd be lost without our NHS, which is in contrast to this headline blaring out on the Daily Mail today. Where have our GPs gone? That is the question they are asking. Maybe you have the answer with that.
So our top story this hour, Boris Johnson is set to address the Ukrainian parliament later today, making him the first world leader to do so since the war began in February.
Well, his speech is expected to echo the words of Winston Churchill, as President Zelensky did when he addressed MPs at Westminster in March.
Mr. Johnson will say this is Ukraine's finest hour, an epic chapter in your national story that will be remembered and recounted for generations to come.
So, in addition, the Prime Minister is set to announce a new £300 million package of military aid. It'll include electronic warfare equipment, a counter-battery radar system, GPS jamming equipment and thousands of night vision devices.
And the address comes 3 weeks after Boris Johnson travelled unannounced to Kyiv to meet Volodymyr Zelensky.
Well, let's speak to Miri Avdiiveva. No idea, Maria, if that's how you spell your name. It's a big word for me, but you can tell us. How do we pronounce your surname?
Maria Avdiiveva.
Aye, that's what I tried to say. But the main thing is you are the research director at the European Expert Association. Maria, Boris Johnson, and he's offering all sorts of things. This equipment, I mean, of course it can't be enough, but it's pretty significant, isn't it?
Yes, absolutely. So, and especially as the new battle for Donbass is now going on here on the east of Ukraine, and Russia has concentrated all its troops and is trying to do an offensive operation to get as much control of the territories in Donbass as possible. And that's why all this military equipment will be used right here to combat with this offensive. And what is important to know is that here the Ukrainian troops in the east near Kharkiv are now doing a very effective counter-offensive operation, trying to push Russian troops further to the border with Russia. And according to the latest reports, about 40 kilometers was their path of how they have managed to push back Russian troops, and that's a good sign. And that means that Ukrainian army has a very good chances of stopping here the Russian troops from their ongoing offensive operation. And this aid and this military equipment will be used here for this.
I noticed, as you said, you're speaking to us from Kharkiv, and I wanted to ask you about reports overnight that I was reading about the bodies of Russian soldiers that have been left behind, which we're hearing is often happening in these places where the Russians have withdrawn, and those bodies not being reclaimed, but they've been placed into a Z formation. Are you able to tell us any more about that?
I haven't seen any information about that, but I do know that Russian troops leave their soldiers here because Russia doesn't care about anyone in the army, and they just leave the bodies lying in Ukrainian territory. And when they withdrew, and then the Ukrainian officials several times asked Russia to get these bodies out of our territory, or any international organizations to deal with them, but it has never happened. And what is striking is that what we see in Mariupol, where Russian troops bring crematoriums, mobile crematoriums, to burn the bodies of Ukrainian civilians that were killed there. And this is horrifying to know. And for their bodies, they don't care, and they just leave them here lying for more than 2 months now.
Cross saying that in relation to that incident you're talking about, the burning of bodies, that mutilating dead bodies in armed conflicts is a war crime, and we know that that is beginning to be recorded across the country as I think parts of the Kharkiv region are being retaken by Ukrainian authorities. And it is really key in all of this, isn't it, to keep a record of exactly what's been happening.
We've lost that line. It freezes up every now and again, and that is the situation that happened there. So we'll take this opportunity to bring you up to date with the latest news stories, and here is how it's looking at 8:07.
Well,
the government is being threatened with legal action over so-called unreasonable delays in processing hundreds of Ukrainian visa applications. Potential sponsors under the Homes for Ukraine scheme say it is putting refugees at risk.
Activists from climate group Just Stop Oil have blockaded an oil terminal in West Dunbartonshire this morning. In their first action in Scotland, protesters have locked themselves to the entrance of the New Star Clydebank facility and climbed on top of tankers. We'll keep a close eye on that developing story for you this morning.
Also expect a strike with the Post Office today. Workers are striking today in dispute over pay. The Communication Workers Union say it's over a 2021 pay freeze and an exceptionally poor offer of a 2% increase from April this year.
At least 300 people were intercepted on 9 small boats in the English Channel yesterday. Crossing began on Sunday after 11 days of strong winds and choppy seas. Let's return now to Maria Adiaveva, from who is Research Director at the European Experts Association. And thanks for bearing with us. I think there was a problem with your line there. But Maria, I just want to ask you about the situation in Mariupol. People here in the UK following this harrowing ordeal of civilians and indeed Ukrainian military very closely. Now, we've had the great news over the weekend of these successful evacuations, but the shelling once again has resumed now.
And there's still women and children inside there.
Yes, the terrible situation in Mariupol, Azovstal, where people are blockaded, and that is Russian troops who blockade them there, so they cannot evacuate safely. And all the efforts of the Ukrainian government was put into these negotiations just to let people go and to save women, children, and wounded people. You know that the military hospital, which is located in the Azovstal, was bombarded heavily several days ago, so people who were already wounded were again hit by the Russian shelling. So we've got the report that the evacuation has started, and that gives us hope that this process, as it has already begun, will be going further. Still, these people have not yet arrived to Zaporizhia, a city which is controlled by Ukrainian troops and which is the nearest, closest safe location. So they are still on their way. And the problem is that the territories through which they go on these buses are controlled by Russian troops. And we all here are waiting just for them to arrive to Zaporizhia, because it has already taken them almost the whole day to get there.
We've been hearing those reports as well, a concerning situation, and we're also following that very closely. Maria Adiaveva, a European Experts Association, thank you for your time this morning.
Let's talk about when you go shopping and this continuing thing. We talk about the high street and the death of the high street, and will the high street be a thing of the past very, very soon? Well, we bring in my favourite economist for this, the economics commentator, Laura Laird. Laura, very lovely to see you again.
How many favourite economists do you have? How long is that list?
You're my favourite. And I like, what's his name at lunchtime? What's his name?
Liam Halligan.
I like him. Or Liam, or as Ruth, she gave him a different name completely. But anyway, Liam is very good. But you're my favourite. So listen, we're talking. They are taking on people. Good news. Bad news, I suppose, for the high street is they're taking them on online.
Absolutely, and they're taking on about 150 people. Remember, John Lewis has let more than 4,000 go from their main bricks and mortar retail operation over the past year. So this seems to be John Lewis saying, wait a second, we're almost abandoning the high street and we're moving online. They say 70% of their sales are now online, which is an extraordinary number. Problem is that online sales aren't holding up quite as well as we expected. Remember, during the pandemic, we all got to grips with online. We all thought this was the way forward. But online sales haven't held up the way a lot of online retailers would have liked.
But that's because people don't have money. We're in this big credit squeeze.
There we go, and that's the point. It's hard to see that any kind of retail is going to hold up. And a lot of retailers are talking right now. They're not quite sure whether people aren't buying because they're starting to feel this squeeze, or are they not buying because they're reading about this squeeze that's in the newspapers all the time and that you and I are talking about, because those energy bills haven't started to hit yet. We're seeing higher food prices.
They have.
Are you feeling it so far?
I know people. I know somebody whose energy bill went up 900%. I'm talking about Northern Ireland. I mean, it's different because we're not online as such. A lot of it is bottled gas and, tanker deliveries of oil and all that sort of thing. But I do think people have got to look ahead. I think people are thinking about whether they should have a holiday. I think people are already thinking about how can I afford Christmas.
Well, and that's going to get a lot worse because we're in an environment where we don't use as much heating fuel as we would in November or December. We're likely to see that fuel cap rise again in October, just when we're using this stuff.
There's nobody more so than me that would talk about the romance of the high street and why I think a high street is good for a community. definitely do, and it's great sociability and things. But we're all the same now. We're all contributing to the death of the high street. It's more convenient for me to go online. You don't meet people. You don't have people who then work in these department stores as well. From a mixing point of view, community point of view, it's not good at all. But listen, parking's an issue. The ease of getting stuff online is just incredible. We're all lazy. We order our food online. We order our clothes online.
I'm as guilty as anybody.
Yeah.
I'd much rather shop from my bed than put my shoes on and battle through self-serve at my local Tesco. But I agree with you. Retailing has been an incredibly important part of the economy here. And it's important for employing young people. I have teenage girls. Where do you get your first Saturday job? You go, you work in a retailer. You get a little bit of experience there. But when I talk to my colleagues who are in the bricks and mortar area, they're absolutely frightened. They're frightened about the rising cost of labor. They're frightened about the rising cost of running these things. You know, we can turn off our energy a little bit. If you have a shop that's open 12 hours a day, you have all that lighting, you have heating, you may have air conditioning. They're terrified about this.
So, net result, we've got to get used to a new reality, don't we?
Well, we have to figure out how we want to shop. And what I'm hearing is that footfall in these shops it's coming back. It's not as bad as people anticipated. But what seems to be missing is impulse buying. So if people go out to their local high street, they go with intent. They have a mission to buy. But retailers aren't seeing the kind of browsing, the kind of impulse buying that we used to see.
When was the last time you were in a department store?
Oh, I can't think. But I do like one. And I do think you're right, Laurie. There are those occasions when you've looked online, but you think you just need to go and try it on in the flesh or test drive it if it's a buggy or whatever it might be. And then you can go and make your purchase. Or you want to go into a shop for comparison purposes, perhaps.
Do you know what's peculiar, though, is I mentioned that internet sales have gone down over the past 6 months. They were down 6% month on month in March. Department store sales have actually been holding up. They had a very bad December, but really good rebound in the early part of the year. So it's interesting.
It's nice to feel and touch and look. If you want to buy a suitcase, you want to see, would it suit me? Do I like the handle, whatever. One of the great joys in my life, both as a child and as a parent, was to be in toy shops. To bring my children.
I hate taking my children to shops.
I'm with you, Isabel. I have 4 of them. I can't think of anything worse.
I think men are more in touch with toys. Men are more childlike.
And also, you're more generous. You'd probably say yes to anything the little ones asked for, whereas I'd be like, nope, that's too much screen time. Nope, that's not good for you.
Just get your hands out of the buggy.
My kids would make the mistake of going with their mum, whatever, to a toy shop in which those restrictions apply. I used to say to them, if you want anything, just come with me. That's it.
So who made the mistake here?
But the experience, what I'm trying to say is the joy of a child experiencing toys, looking whether they get them or not. And there's always a birthday at school or something, you've got to be buying something, whatever. I always thought that was a very joyous, beautiful experience. And it's a retail experience as well. But that's gone.
But isn't it funny, though, because toy shops, this retail kind of straightening hit toy shops years ago. Hamleys has been gone for ages. Toys R Us.
Is it gone?
It's been
reduced, is it?
Absolutely reduced. It's changed owners so many times because nobody can really make money out of it. Toys R Us, remember the big chain in sort of out-of-town retailing parks? That's been gone for ages. Nobody could make that format work.
But it's like, I could romantically talk to you about Woolworths, and then you would say, well, when were you actually last in it? And that's a whole
I was
story.
a big Woolworths fan. The evaporation of Woolworths changed my life.
Yeah. No, I know. As a teenager, I would have bought Elton John and Kinky D in Woolworths.
Kinky D.
In Woolworths in 1976. And you could have got anything you wanted, in Woolworths.
Pens,
when records were 10p.
Yeah, but now
50p, maybe it's 50p.
I sit on Instagram, and then the shopping adverts pop up because they kind of know, what I'm into or what I want, and then I do my buying impulse buying through Instagram, which is a nightmare.
And you are this new wave. This is how shoppers, this is how companies want to monetize people, and no one is doing it better than Shein. Have you heard of Shein? Yeah. It's a Chinese conglomerate, very secretive, but said to be worth $100 billion US. Although it's privately held, we don't see their accounts. But Shein is displacing Zara, it's displacing H&M, it's displacing Primark.
Although returns are a complete nightmare with them because they're so secretive. How do I send it back?
My kids are big fans. I haven't tried it yet.
Yeah, it's very cheap.
I worked in Primark for a year. So I did, as a trainee manager. So
your mum would have loved it if you'd have stayed there.
Yeah, how did you leave? How did you get here?
A book on explanations there. And the worst thing you have to deal with in a big shop like that are people. It'd be great if they had no customers.
You love people. What are you on about?
Oh, you work in retail, you work in any service industry, and you will hate
complaining
people
all day long.
Yeah. Just moan. I just want to say, shut up.
Have you ever been to the Primark in Marble Arch? It's like the population of a small country. I can't leave that store without bursting into tears. It's so mobbed.
And they don't do online, as far as I'm aware.
No, they don't, yeah.
No. That's amazing. But you see, one of the big villains in all of this who are rarely mentioned are landlords in the high street, greedy landlords. I mean, if I go, local traders, you try and go to an optician's, for instance, and they're just forced out all of the time because...
Well, also the business rates from the councils.
And this is a very, very big deal. And I hear retailers say this to me all the time. They had a holiday on business rates during the pandemic. That all of that pandemic support is going away. And they say the government doesn't want to hear from them, that all of their pleas are falling on deaf ears.
No, I agree with you. So the landlords, they suck the life out of the high street, and then they're going to be left with properties that no one wants eventually. And what are they going to do with them then? That's a whole other story for another day, Laura, but really lovely to talk to you. Thanks
and you guys, thanks for having me.
And if you have a high street story to tell, because we were talking about this in the local elections, and some people we were speaking to in East Lothian this morning were saying, look, high street is one of the issues that they want dealt with, because without a high street you don't have a community.
Yeah, although my high street is all estate agents and nail bars and hairdressers.
Restaurants.
And I have to say, and restaurants. There is quite a sense of community in all of those places. Like it or loathe estate agents, they live and know the area often. Nail bars, people coming from the local streets. I find where I live, the high street seems to be quite alive. It's just not necessarily
with charity
retail.
shops.
Yeah, charity shops. That's, circular economy. It's not all bad. It's not all bad.
Yeah, what is bad on the high street? What are you fed up looking at? Well, there's barbers everywhere.
I don't like kebab shops.
Do you not?
No. Anyway, this is our local...
Wish I could agree with you on that. But I think it's a lovely thing as well, if you're able to live near a high street. My goodness me. And you can pop out to the shops and you can pop out to whatever the restaurant or fast food takeaway is. That must be a great privilege
or the pub.
To have there. Oh, there you are, back to drink again. Back to drink. And we were talking about this in Westminster about why there are
about drinking at work.
Yeah, all about this drinking at work, and people were saying, name me another source of business that has bars in it, where you go to work and there's a bar.
Well, I told you our old place of work had one.
Well, what? So that was dry. That place was dry. Well, it wasn't in the newsroom.
It wasn't in the newsroom.
So where was it stuck away?
Well, this isn't in the Commons.
What were they serving? Avocado juice or something?
I never had a drink. I didn't really socialise that. But anyway, Kenneth says, and I agree with Kenneth, they are adults and entitled to a drink. If people abuse that and do silly things, then they should be removed from the office. 100% agree. Why should everyone be punished for the behaviour of a few? I agree. We don't want to all be treated like children just because some people can't behave like adults.
That's because you're ruled by alcohol. That's because as soon as you see alcohol, you salivate and you follow your nose. You're sniffing.
That is slanderous, and it is untrue.
I think you'll find that'll hold up in court.
Oh.
I have witnesses. 22 minutes past 8 o'clock. What are we going to be doing shortly?
I don't know. I might be taking a swift exit. We'll see.
We're going to be going through the papers on this Tuesday one. Before we do that, the weather's going to be good.
Yes, it's going to be good, apparently.
Weather's going to be good.
Yeah.
Looking ahead to today's weather, and the UK is looking rather cloudy in most areas this morning with some patchy rain in places. Let's take a look at the details. By the middle of the day, some brighter weather will be developing across the southwest of England, although this is likely to spark off a scattering of sharp showers. The southeast is likely to remain under a thicker blanket of cloud, and although most places look dry, the odd spot of drizzle is possible. Heading across to Wales, and here cloud will be lifting and thinning to give some sunshine, although as it warms up, a few showers will break out. The Midlands will continue to see rather a lot of cloud, giving the odd patch of light rain, and as a result, the temperature will be pegged back a little bit too. It'll feel quite chilly across parts of northeast England, as cloudy skies and some local drizzle will be combined with a cool, albeit gentle breeze blowing in off the North Sea. Most of Scotland will be shrouded in a blanket of cloud as well, and there'll be a bit of an east to west split in temperature, with the highest values towards the west. Little sunshine is likely across Northern Ireland around lunchtime, and there'll be a few showers, especially in the east. Nonetheless, temperatures will be around the early May average. Some heavier showers will develop across Wales and the southwest this afternoon, and rain will arrive in the northwest this evening. And that's how the weather is shaping up for the rest of the day.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debate, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
On radio, they call it the drive time slot, 4 p.m. until 6 p.m. as listeners head home. It's that part of the schedule when the dust of the day's events begin to clarify, and we try to make sense of it for you. Brazier is drive time for radio and TV. It's fast, it's punchy, it's opinionated, there's a Brazier angle and a little bit of levity.
That's the question. That's two questions, actually.
That's Brazier, Monday to Thursday, 4 till 6 on GB News.
Hello, I'm Patrick Christie's.
And I'm Mercy Moroki.
Make sure that you join us Monday to Thursday, 10 a.m. until midday, right here on GB News for To The Point.
We're not afraid to talk about the topics that matter to you or the big topics that always matter.
We cover absolutely everything, from the breaking political stories of the day to law and order, what's going on in the channel. We're not afraid to hold people to account.
We always make sure we include your views on our show.
Indeed, if you're thinking it, you can guarantee that we're saying it. So make sure you join the conversation with us, 10 a.m. until midday, Monday to Thursday for To The Point on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Welcome back. This month marks the start of Skin Cancer Awareness, and the campaign aims to raise awareness of the dangers of unprotected sun exposure and to educate the public about the ways to help prevent skin cancer.
Well, if that's got you thinking, here to give you advice about the early signs to watch out for is the Dr. Frankie Jackson-Spence. Frankie, very good to see you this morning. And it gets to this time of the year where, you know, we're in for a couple of good days of weather as well. And you sort of think, well, it's not summer yet, so the sun mightn't be that strong.
So that isn't actually true. There's two types of UV rays, UVA rays and UVB rays. And even on a cloudy day in the UK, like today, the UVA can still be high. So it's important actually that people wear SPF, high-factor sun cream, every single day, even in winter.
But people didn't wear high-factor SPF for generations. Why suddenly do we need to do that on a winter's day in a country, cold climate like England?
So people didn't used to wear SPF and they didn't used to be as clued up on the importance of sun safety. But actually, since the 1990s, the rate of skin cancer has increased at a higher rate than any other cancer. So we are seeing the knock-on effects and the increased rates of skin cancer from that now.
And the interesting thing is, it's fact. You can't deny it. You can't say, oh, I'm not susceptible to it or it doesn't happen. Because I always remember as a young reporter, realising the people who suffered more from skin cancer were...
Women?
Farmers.
Oh, farmers.
Farmers. That was the biggest rate of people. And obviously, with their whole life in rain
Outdoors.
and in sun and whatever it is, they were outdoors all the time. So what Frankie was saying, the rays still get through.
Exactly, and everyone's at risk of skin cancer. It is more commonly seen in people with fair skin types who burn more easily, and having an episode of sunburn, particularly in your childhood years or early teens, can double your risk of developing a skin cancer later in life. But darker skin tones or people who tan easily are still at risk, so it's important not to be complacent.
Yeah, I'm one of both those people. I burn, but then I tan really easily, so I probably need to be careful. But, with all the awareness and everything that goes around it, people are still shocked and surprised to hear that it can actually be fatal. Just a case of a dodgy mole perhaps on your nose or whatever it might be, and people die from this.
So it is a fairly preventable and curable cancer type compared to some of the other cancer types, but certain cases of melanoma, which is the most aggressive form of skin cancer, can spread to other parts of the body, just like any other cancer can. So it's important to know the signs and symptoms so that you can go and get that mole checked or that skin lesion checked early and prevent that happening, because about 90% of cases are curable with just surgical excision. So
really, so if you just cut it out, if you find it, if it's detected, you go and see a medic about it, and if it is cut out, that could be most of the problem removed.
Absolutely. Having a previous skin cancer, even if it's cured, does put you at increased risk of developing another skin cancer later in life, but that one can be cured with surgical excision in most cases.
So, Doctor, here's the question. People will have moles, they'll have freckles, they'll have lots of little things, most of which will be totally harmless, and a lot of them are just a sign of ageing, I suppose, in a way. What's there to worry about? I mean, somebody watching this morning, listening this morning, and if they're inspecting themselves, what should they worry about?
So we should look at the A, B, C, D, E of moles. So things to look out for. A, is it asymmetrical or irregular? B, borders. Does it have a nice clear border or has it got jagged edges?
Do we want a nice clear border?
We want a normal healthy mole would have a nice regular border.
Okay.
C, for colour. So does it have more than one colour or any unusual colours? D, is it diameter, is it bigger than the size of a pea or is it growing? And E, is it evolving? So is it changing? Is it not healing? Is it bleeding or crusting? They're the 5 things to look out for.
Sometimes moles are in inaccessible places and it's hard to check them. I think of my husband, who's very moley on his back, and he's been told he needs to keep an eye on them, but he can't. So we have this amazing app, which I regularly use the app, and it scans and it checks whether any of them have changed or whether any of them need inspection. And he also has had really great care just through the NHS. Regularly, throughout even the pandemic, he had video calls to check his moles, and they continually call him in regularly, and has had a couple of them. He called it like a hole punch in his back, chopping out the moles. But there's great services out there and ways to keep safe.
Absolutely, and it's all about what you said, tracking over time. Has a mole changed? Is there a new lesion there? And taking photos is a great way to do that. But I would say don't leave it down to your own judgment. If you have any doubt, it's always better to get checked out.
So this is Skin Cancer Awareness Month, so we're going to be hearing a lot more about this. So there's going to be campaigns about this as well, and we're going to be hearing from more people like Dr. Frankie Jackson-Spence. Thank you for your advice this morning. Really appreciate it.
Thank you. Do you wear sun cream every single day?
No.
No, neither.
You see, I have this thing that Frankie was talking about there, is that some members of my family, my kids and their mum and whatever, would have very pale skin and be very susceptible. They would burn.
Whereas
all
you
the
from
time.
the Spanish Armada.
Yeah. You see, I've always tanned easily. Although as I get older, I find it slightly less. I tend to go red rather than brown now.
Probably not good.
Yeah, but I would have been much more just loose about it, not as regulatory.
What you should do, leave your studio makeup on more often after you leave the show, because actually a lot of makeup now has SPF in it, doesn't it? It's a really good way to... Not only that, it's anti-ageing, so there's a win-win there.
So lots of makeup does have SPF in, but actually you don't often apply makeup in large enough quantities to actually get the targeted SPF protection, so you should wear it as well.
And just for the record, I don't wear makeup.
Oh, sorry, naturally beautiful.
That's right.
Sorry.
Well, I don't even know what would make you think that I do in any way. We're going to hit the break there. We're going to go through the newspapers, read all about it right after this.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debates, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
On radio, they call it the drive time slot, 4 p.m. until 6 p.m. as listeners head home. It's that part of the schedule when the dust of the day's events begin to clarify, and we try to make sense of it for you. Brazier is drive time for radio and TV. It's fast, it's punchy, it's opinionated, there's a Brazier angle and a little bit of levity.
That's the question. That's two questions, actually.
That's Brazier, Monday to Thursday, 4 till 6 on GB News.
Hello, I'm Patrick Christie's.
And I'm Mercy Moroki.
Make sure that you join us Monday to Thursday, 10 a.m. until midday, right here on GB News for To The Point.
We're not afraid to talk about the topics that matter to you, or the big topics that always matter.
We cover absolutely everything, from the breaking political stories of the day to law and order, what's going on in the channel. We're not afraid to hold people to account.
We always make sure we include your views on our show.
Indeed, if you're thinking it, you can guarantee that we're saying it. So make sure you join the conversation with us, 10 a.m. until midday, Monday to Thursday, for To The Point on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
News update in the latest situation is this. The government's being threatened with legal action over unreasonable delays in processing hundreds of Ukrainian visa applications. Potential sponsors under the Homes for Ukraine scheme say this is putting refugees at risk.
Activists from the climate group Just Stop Oil have blockaded an oil terminal in West Dunbartonshire this morning. In their first action in Scotland, protesters have locked themselves to the entrance of the New Star Clydebank facility and have climbed onto the top of tankers. They're keeping a close eye on that developing story for you.
Post office workers are striking today. This is a dispute over pay. The Communication Workers Union say it's over a 2021 pay freeze, and then an exceptionally poor offer of a 2% increase from April this year.
And a parade of stars have celebrated American fashion at the annual Met Gala in New York, including Elon Musk seen there. The guests were told to dress in gilded glamour for the annual fundraiser for the Metropolitan Museum of Art. Although, as Eamonn points out, not many of them really understanding what that means. Hardly anybody in gold, apart from Cara.
We welcome back for their take on the newspapers now Kevin Craig, who is a PR executive and expert, and Amy Cameron, appropriately enough, who is a climate campaigner. And the reason I say that, Amy, of course, you just saw that story there, Just Stop Oil in Dunbartonshire, this protest that is ongoing. And actually, I'm not surprised, because this week we've had the government talking about let's increase the output from the North Sea oil fields in terms of oil and gas. And I was sitting wondering myself, saying, how does all of this marry in to the COP summit and what's happening next? But I counter that with people are facing this fuel crisis, people are facing bills here and now, people want an answer to this. Do you think they will be less tolerant towards protesters like this?
It's difficult. I think in reality, I can understand people's sense of annoyance. However, a fire alarm is annoying. It is alerting you to a bigger problem. And I think that's the context in which we have to see these protesters. I know many people who take direct action, and it often feels extremely unpleasant. The level of dislike that these people face, often young people, but not uniquely, is intense. But what feels worse to them is feeling like they're sitting back and watching a crisis unfold, which this government just simply is not meeting.
Yeah. But Amy, would it move you that much to take direct action? Maybe you have taken direct action in the past, but it's always one thing to have an opinion and say, oh, I won't do this, or I disagree, or I agree with that, but then actually to go out there and do it.
I have to say that I've never been more tempted than I am in our current times. And I say that as someone who, I've been a climate campaigner for over 10 years now. We have tried all of the appropriate channels. I've signed petitions, I've gone on marches, I've met with MPs, I've shared things on social media, I've gone into communities and done community organising. The government is still not doing enough. And the level of frustration that you can feel in the face of both the cost of living crisis and the climate crisis, it's phenomenal. It is very hard for people who are campaigning on this issue, who understand as much as most how biting the cost of living crisis that we're currently facing is, much of it, the vast majority of it, being driven by our overdependence on oil and gas. As well as this news today, we've also had news today that BP have just announced yet more record profits. Their profits announced today for the first quarter are $6 billion. That's 3 times more than they were expecting. These protesters are not driving the cost of living crisis.
Here's a question.
Profiteering is driving the
Here's a question, if I may, and I think we all share the concern about excess profits. What about when the Insulate Britain lot were sticking themselves to the road and stopping ambulances getting to hospitals?
There was very, very few examples of that
happening.
It happened. Yeah, but it also happens all the time in the context of traffic on the M4.
But that's not deliberate.
I don't think it totally undermines what was a legitimate call,
does.
and which
you
would now have been.
If it was your relative. Yes, you would. If your relative was going to hospital.
Yeah, I totally take that point. If it was something that affected your relative, then yes. However, it is disproportionate to say that they were causing a problem beyond the normal problems that ambulances face. And if we had heeded some of the calls of those protesters, those desperate protesters who spanned all age generations, we would be doing something already about insulation, which would be helping many, many people who will die this year in cold homes. Sorry, I'll let you.
No. It's really interesting, and the climate debate will rage on, I'm sure, and certainly will set the inbox alight. But I do want to go,
Kevin, could we go to this unsolved crime situation in the Telegraph here? Well, because they're saying that unsolved burglaries are 500 a day. 500 a day are the figures here. And listen, it doesn't shock me because I really don't think anyone cares.
Well, I share that sense of... Well, I am shocked that people don't care more, Eamonn. And this.
When I say people, I mean the authorities.
Oh, right. Because I think people, British citizens, this is a great story on page 6 of the Telegraph. I mean, the chances of somebody being arrested for burglary are almost non-existent. 3.3% of burglaries result in somebody being charged. So the country we live in, supposedly under a party of law and order, it's not happening.
I have a friend, right, and at 3:15 in the morning, he was woken up by his outside CCTV cameras, right? And these outside CCTV cameras show 3 men in balaclavas and with backpacks going up to their 2 cars in his driveway and going up to the car, and they were doing something. What they were actually doing was they were trying to clone the key and start the cars and that sort of thing. And he called the police. The guys take off, right? The gang was known to the police. They had travelled from Essex to Hertfordshire. And he said, well, you know, are you going after them or what's happening? They said, no, because actually they didn't do anything. They were on your driveway, but they didn't steal the cars. And they didn't. So 3 masked balaclava-clad men can walk into your driveway at 3:15 in the morning, fiddle around with your car, and they face no threat at all of being caught.
Let me add to that, though. My parents had that exact scenario, the key cloned and their car stolen from their drive, all on CCTV. CCTV offered to the police. They took a week before they even came and collected it. And even though you could see the offenders, the criminals who stole their car on that footage, nothing was ever done, no prosecution was ever sought.
My point about it is whether the poor police are stretched left, right and centre and whatever, whether they have the resources or not, we should all be pretending they have the resources. You should be scaring the bejesus out of these potential thefts.
They don't. And I think this is and it's happened under governments of all political colours, which I'll say to be fair. But the fact is, the rhetoric nationally about 20,000 extra police officers, which is also mentioned here, you show me a single person, you've just heard from yourselves there, whose anecdotal experience says that burglary is being taken seriously. And I don't think it's good enough.
No, it's not. It's not good enough. It's not good enough at all. It just doesn't... It undermines the whole idea that people invest in their homes, they invest, they save up, they buy something, their homes are violated, their security is violated, their personal space is violated, and their stuff's taken and people think they can do it and get away with it. So, where are we going to go to next?
Should we go to pensions?
Why you do that when I would have gone
I just thought I was saving that for the end, but maybe it is time. Have we got how many stories?
No, we're nearly time for the end.
Okay, well, let's go personal growth then, Amy. Tell us what this story in the Times is all about, and I think I know. I don't want to know, is what I'm trying to say.
I would have done the countdown story, but anyway.
Oh, really?
No, I'm really
sorry. I haven't got that on my list. Oh, I haven't got that on my list.
What do you want? I can do man with the penis on his arm or countdown.
No, we've started, so we've finished. What is personal growth about?
I'm really glad we've prioritised this story. I think the people need to hear it. So a man has had a penis reattached. Am I allowed to say that?
Yes, why not?
It's a medical
biological
term.
part.
I do think this is just an incredible story about medical advances.
Yes.
So this is a man who sadly lost his penis after a blood disease. A blood disease.
So it fell off, or had to have it
I think he had to have it removed, perhaps.
Oh.
It mentioned in the article that he was a man who had suffered with, I think, drinking problems, and so it was in poor health.
Yes,
mind
This
boggles.
was quite a long time ago, and what they managed to do was create a new appendage, if you will, from a skin graft on his arm.
From his fourth.
Which had been...
Sorry, from his forearm, I meant to say.
Which has been on his arm now for 6 years.
So this has been growing.
I'm surprised he's bothered.
Growing on his arm for 6 years.
6 years, and in a huge comment of understatement.
Because he could have just popped to the loo, Amy, a lot, over there, bosh out. Why has he gone back?
I don't know what this is.
I'm not sure it's fully functioning. Medical advances haven't gone that far.
Bosh out.
But one of the things I love in it is that he mentions that it has made
You do everything you can to avoid the naughty bit, and then it's the first bit that comes out with you, isn't it? Isn't it?
It's like Tourette's.
Your greatest hits on this programme. I know you wanted to be huge political interviews and things, but I mean, it's growing in my mind all the time. A bit like his penis on his arm.
Forearm.
Yeah. Well, I'm just glad for the poor man that this can happen. And goodness me, it is a huge advance in medical science. It is a huge advance.
Medicine's amazing.
So listen, at Countdown, the Queen of Mean, Anne Robinson, is quitting amid speculation that Rachel Riley, who does the numbers, does the figures on there, that there's a bit of tension between them.
Ooh, who would you back in a fight between those two?
Well, what's interesting is you read the story, and basically Anne Robinson is quite open. They don't know each other. The three leading women on this show, they don't go out socially. There's not a huge amount of love lost, and she's ready to move on. I mean, she's on £500,000 a year for the leading, a leading quiz show. I suspect Eamonn's phone will be ringing as soon as you're off air.
Well, I think that could be a very good idea.
Get your agent on that.
Let's have a look. But it's just she has increased the viewing figures, so that's what she was brought in to do. But really interesting behind the scenes on a very popular quiz show that the hosts don't get on, they don't go out, and the very well paid lead is off.
Kevin, you've summed this up beautifully. The whole lie about television, of course, is that every pairing, everybody gets on with everybody else. Isabel and I do get on.
Long suffering. Oh, sorry, yeah.
We do get on.
We do.
We do get on.
We do.
But it's the false ones. Hello, good morning. We're best friends.
And then they're doing
Very
this
lovely.
behind our back.
And it's all. I have a term for it, but anyway, it really is
false.
But you know what? It's you, the public, don't want to know the truth, because I've got into trouble before. by telling the truth about people. It doesn't go
can't
down
believe
well.
that.
Doesn't go down well.
I mean, obviously, I've got a lot of follow-up questions, but not any that you should answer. I don't know.
It's good fun. Why not?
It's all for the next autobiography. It'll all be there. It'll all be there.
Can't believe we have to say goodbye to this pairing for now.
Yeah, you're a super pairing.
Amy and
Thank
Kevin
you
work
both very
very
much
well
indeed.
together. Thank
very
you.
lovely having you.
Yeah,
Thank you
really
both very much
appreciate it.
indeed. Thank you.
If there was
Thank
a
you.
bit too much of that.
13 minutes now before 9 o'clock, bringing you up to date with the news. We begin with Ukraine, and the mayor of Mariupol says 100,000 civilians are still there, which has been occupied by Russian forces. More than 200 still holed up with fighters in that steel plant. It remains under shelling.
A genetic test to spot a rare form of eye cancer in babies in the womb is being rolled out across the NHS for those families who are at risk. The test will identify those with retinoblastoma and is likely to identify around 50 cases each year in England.
Sir Billy Connolly is being honoured with a television BAFTA Award, a fellowship there on Sunday. The 79-year-old comedian, also known as the Big Yin, will be celebrated for a career spanning more than 5 decades.
This week, voters from across the country will go to the polls, and in Northern Ireland, they'll be electing a new government to the devolved Assembly.
Well, our Northern Ireland reporter, Dougie Beattie, on this one. He takes a look at the seat of Fermanagh and South Tyrone.
In terms of square miles, this is a large constituency. The population is about 109,000. Upper and Lower Lough Erne embrace its largest town of Enniskillen. It has a growing manufacturing sector, but like most of Northern Ireland, agriculture is a large percentage of its income. Fermanagh South Tyrone straddles an EU border. Behind me is the UK, in front of me the Irish Republic. It has a high dependency on tourism and therefore is open to fluctuations in the currency markets. The hospitality sector has felt the financial strain of the pandemic, but now the holidaymakers are returning. The older population is lower than the national average here, while the younger generation is greater. This election is the first after the lockdowns, and voters are now clear on their priorities.
The politicians would need to get the infrastructure right, the roads.
Well, the cost of living crisis, clearly. People are really struggling.
Probably healthcare, maybe.
Honesty and a sense of direction, not linked to partisan issues.
Cost of living and the price.
Fuel bills, yeah.
Fuel bills.
The health service, people's health.
Nationalists have a majority here, with Sinn Féin holding 3 seats, the DUP and the UUP 1 apiece. The SDLP have held seats here before, and the alliance may spring a surprise. Dougie Beattie, GB News, Fermanagh and South Tyrone.
Thanks, Dougie. I'm going to be there next week, actually, for a week in that part of the world. It's interesting, you know, people in Northern Ireland, there is other politics besides that divide, whether you're unionist or nationalist as well. So Thursday, those elections taking place.
Now, today marks the 15th anniversary, would you believe, of the disappearance of Madeleine McCann. On May the 3rd, 2007, the 3-year-old disappeared from her holiday resort in Praia da Luz in Portugal, and her parents have never stopped looking for her, and they say they are still hopeful for answers.
Well, hopefully supplying some perspective in all of this, our Home and Security editor, Mark White, joins us now to look back at this thing that has to haunt the parents and members of the family, because there's just no answers. There's no answers.
Yes, and they've said as much today in a statement that, you know, not knowing there is weakness, in actually having some certainty there is strength, and they're desperate to know. They want closure. They still, after all these years, hold out, even if it's the minutest of hope, a hope that Madeleine might still be alive. The German authorities who are investigating this, because they have a prime suspect, a man called Christian, known by his surname under the data protection laws in Germany, Christian B. They have said that they believe Madeleine is dead, although they have never said formally why they've come to that particular conclusion. So yeah, it's been hanging over the parents of Madeleine McCann and the wider family for all of these years. They don't know, and still the investigations continue to find out what happened to her.
Look, there was this sort of breakthrough when it was believed that that mobile phone data put Christian B close to where Madeleine disappeared from. But now he's been saying from his German prison cell that he has an alibi for the night she went missing.
Well, so he is claiming, apparently, according to these reports. But the German prosecutors say that he has in no way put forward any kind of an alibi that puts him away from that area, or otherwise puts the attention away from him in terms of his potential involvement in the abduction of Madeleine McCann. He has said that he was with a young woman, a holidaymaker, in his camper van many miles from Praia da Luz. As I say, he's not said that to German authorities. They had interviewed him last month because he's formally now been declared an arguido, a suspect, a main suspect in this investigation. That's because of a statute of limitations that was about to run out in terms of the Portuguese authorities. So they declared him that. German authorities then interviewed him on behalf of the Portuguese. He said absolutely nothing. He didn't offer this alibi then.
Do you know how long he's in prison in Germany for?
He is in prison for 7 years for the rape of a tourist in the Praia da Luz area.
So it's not in his interests to admit anything in relation to Madeleine, because that would lead to a much longer sentence.
Yeah, he's due to get out. He's due to be free again in the foreseeable future. So he clearly denies this. There is, according to German authorities, Portuguese authorities as well, a lot of evidence that's mounting, some of it circumstantial, but there's the phone data evidence that you mentioned there, Isabel. That is still a key piece of evidence that puts him just minutes away from that holiday apartment in Praia da Luz on the evening that Madeleine disappeared. And, OK, he may well have been with a tourist in his camper van at some point that evening, but that doesn't necessarily mean he was with that woman for the totality of that evening. Would she be able to give him the kind of alibi that could account for the whole of that evening? Well, that remains to be seen if he actually even uses this.
Yeah, and look, if we cast our minds back 15 years, it was such a huge story at the time, wasn't it? All of us will remember almost every detail. It was like the nation was gripped by this disappearance, and so difficult for the parents all these years. They've got 2 other kids, haven't they, the twins, and they've put this Winnie the Pooh statement or quote out today, and it was really heartfelt. What were they saying?
Well, they were saying the most important things is even if we're apart, I'll always be with you. A key quote from Winnie the Pooh. Heartfelt, of course, but it has been very difficult for them. And, you know, they've never been far as some people are concerned, from a finger of suspicion themselves. They were at one point declared arguidos by the Portuguese authority before then being completely ruled out. But for some people, they still don't accept that. They buy into
it's an extra layer of horror for them.
Yeah, of course.
Ways.
And then they buy into all of the conspiracy theories around, you know, did they somehow, you know, poison their own daughter or try to cover it up? It's, I mean, it's horrific what the parents have had to endure, you know, the double trauma of losing a daughter, not knowing where that daughter is, and then, of course, also coming under a finger of suspicion themselves.
Mark, appreciate it. Thank you very much indeed. 15 years to the day since Madeleine McCann went missing. The time, 5 minutes to 9. We're going to take a break and look, as well as all the top of the news at the top of the hour, we've got legendary singer Kiki D. Remember the summer of 1976? 10 weeks at #1 she was. She'll be playing us a new song from her latest album after 9. See you then.
Looking ahead to today's weather, and the UK is looking rather cloudy in most areas this morning with some patchy rain in places. Let's take a look at the details. By the middle of the day, some brighter weather will be developing across the southwest of England, although this is likely to spark off a scattering of sharp showers. The southeast is likely to remain under a thicker blanket of cloud, and although most places look dry, the odd spot of drizzle is possible. Heading across to Wales, and here cloud will be lifting and thinning to give some sunshine, although as it warms up, a few showers will break out. The Midlands will continue to see rather a lot of cloud, giving the odd patch of light rain, and as a result, the temperature will be pegged back a little bit too. It'll feel quite chilly across parts of northeast England, as cloudy skies and some local drizzle will be combined with a cool, albeit gentle breeze blowing in off the North Sea. Most of Scotland will be shrouded in a blanket of cloud as well, and there'll be a bit of an east to west split in temperature, with the highest values towards the west. Little sunshine is likely across Northern Ireland around lunchtime, and there'll be a few showers, especially in the east. Nonetheless, temperatures will be around the early May average. Some heavier showers will develop across Wales and the southwest this afternoon, and rain will arrive in the northwest this evening. And that's how the weather is shaping up for the rest of the day.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debates, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debates, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
On radio, they call it the drive time slot, 4 p.m. until 6 p.m. as listeners head home. It's that part of the schedule when the dust of the day's events begin to clarify, and we try to make sense of it for you. Brazier is drive time for radio and TV. It's fast, it's punchy, it's opinionated, there's a Brazier angle and a little bit of levity.
That's the question. That's two questions, actually.
That's Brazier, Monday to Thursday, 4 till 6 on GB News.
Hello, I'm Patrick Christie's.
And I'm Mercy Moroki.
Make sure that you join us Monday to Thursday, 10 a.m. until midday, right here on GB News for To The Point.
We're not afraid to talk about the topics that matter to you, or the big topics that always matter.
We cover absolutely everything, from the breaking political stories of the day to law and order, what's going on in the channel. We're not afraid to hold people to account.
We always make sure we include your views on our show.
Indeed, if you're thinking it, you can guarantee that we're saying it. So make sure you join the conversation with us, 10 a.m. until midday, Monday to Thursday for To The Point on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
This is Ukraine's finest hour. The words Boris Johnson will be speaking to the Ukrainian parliament later today.
A very good morning to you on this Tuesday morning. It is 9 o'clock. This is Breakfast on GB News with Eamonn, Holmes and Isabel Webster.
Here's what's leading the news this morning. Boris Johnson will be the first world leader to address the Ukrainian parliament since the outbreak of war in February. Speaking virtually, the PM is set to praise Ukraine's resistance, as well as announce a new £300 million package of military aid.
Looking ahead, we'll have a full roundup of the celebrity news. Stephanie Tyke with that. And speaking of showbiz...
Yeah, I want you to sing this one.
Don't go breaking my heart. The one and only Kiki D will be with us live in the studio to talk about approaching 60 years in music and her new album, and bringing back lots of memories for me from the summer, the hottest summer ever, 1976, when she and Elton John were 10 weeks at #1.
Good memories, good memories.
That was my first girlfriend.
Oh,
that was our song.
Yeah, it was the song, yeah. Well, look, we want to hear from you. We are the People's Channel, so remember, get in touch, tell us your stories, tell us your memories, send your fan mail to Kiki D. by emailing gbviews@gbnews.uk, or you can tweet us at gbnews.
Ooh, ooh. And nobody told us, nobody told us.
Don't worry, we'll get the real version in a minute.
So, Boris Johnson is set to address the Ukrainian parliament later today, making him the first world leader to do so since the war began in February.
PM's speech is expected to echo the words of Winston Churchill, as President Volodymyr Zelensky did when he addressed MPs at Westminster in March.
Mr Johnson is expected to say this is Ukraine's finest hour, an epic chapter in your national story that will be remembered and recounted for generations to come.
Well, in addition, the PM is set to announce a new £300 million package in military aid, which will include electronic warfare equipment, a counter-battery radar system, GPS jamming equipment and thousands of night vision devices.
All of this comes 3 weeks after Boris Johnson travelled unannounced to Kyiv to meet President Zelensky.
Well, earlier we spoke to Maria Avdieva, the research director at the European Expert Association, on the current state of things in Ukraine.
The new battle for Donbas is now going on here on the east of Ukraine, and Russia has concentrated all its troops and is trying to do an offensive operation to get as much control of the territories in Donbas as possible. And that's why all this military equipment will be used right here to combat with this offensive. And what is important to know is that here, the Ukrainian troops in the east near Kharkiv are now doing a very effective counter-offensive operation, trying to push Russian troops further to the border with Russia. And according to the latest reports, about 40 kilometers was their path of how they have managed to push back Russian troops. And that's a good sign. And that means that Ukrainian army has a very good chances of stopping here the Russian troops from their ongoing offensive operation, and this aid and this military equipment will be used here for this. Russian troops leave their soldiers here because Russia doesn't care about anyone in the army, and they just leave the bodies lying in Ukrainian territory. And when they withdrew, and then the Ukrainian officials several times asked Russia to get these bodies out of our territory, or any international organizations to deal with them, but it has never happened. And what is striking is that what we see in Mariupol, where Russian troops bring crematoriums, mobile crematoriums, to burn the bodies of Ukrainian civilians that were killed there. The terrible situation in Mariupol, Azovstal, where people are blockaded, and that is Russian troops who blockade them there, so they cannot evacuate safely. And all the efforts of the Ukrainian government was put into these negotiations just to let people go and to save women, children, and wounded people. You know that the military hospital, which is located in the Azovstal, was bombarded heavily several days ago, so people who were already wounded were again hit by the Russian shelling. So we've got the report that the evacuation has started, and that gives us hope that this process, as it has already begun, will be going further. Still, these people have not yet arrived to Zaporizhia, a city which is controlled by Ukrainian troops and which is the nearest, closest safe location. So they are still on their way, and the problem is that the territories through which they go on these buses are controlled by Russian troops, and we all here are waiting just for them to arrive to Zaporizhia, because it has already taken them almost the whole day to get there.
Well, that's the news situation this morning. We're now moving to the world of entertainment. We are actually going to entertain you and give you a show. Because it's not just the Rolling Stones who've been round a while. Sir Elton John's friend, the amazing Kiki Dee, is approaching 60 years in the music business. But She looks exactly the same. I'm telling you. I've seen this one
And
here.
sounds,
She was here
and
today.
sounds.
Good
exactly
morning.
the same. Good morning. Welcome to the programme.
Thank you so much.
And Kiki is here with Carmelo Lugeri, who very shortly will be performing with her here. Kiki, this is amazing. It's just lovely to meet you. You are a soundtrack to my years. Look, you know, I was aware of you in 1974, 1975, that stuff that you would have done, Amaruz and the great song I've Got the Music in Me, which is a great anthem. It is, you know, soundtrack of my years. Then we got serious. Then we got to 1976, and it was the hottest summer on record. Yeah. And you guys were stuck there. What a place to be stuck. #1 for I think it was something like 10 weeks or so.
Yeah, it was a long time.
It was a long time. Elton John, Kiki D, Don't Go Breaking My Heart. Did that, even though, you know, you're a talented musician, you're a singer, you're a songwriter, you had hits, did that change anything, that song?
That's a good question, actually. I think my music's moved on a lot since then, but I think it gave me a world stage, which I didn't have before. People knew me in the UK from Amaruz and Music in Me. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, it gave me that opportunity. And also, Elton's so iconic now that it keeps my name up there, which is always handy.
And you're still friends.
You see, you should bear that in mind. That was a good partnership for her. that could work for you.
It already is, yeah. So you stayed best of friends all this time and you know, supported each other throughout the years, have you?
I think that we're not what I call everyday friends.
Yeah.
You know, when I speak to him, it's like it was yesterday. And I speak to him 2 or 3 times a year.
Yeah.
And... yeah, he's very, what's the word? I mean, he's very empathic. I lost my sister last year and he had a long chat with him about it. And, yeah. So he's my real friend.
Yeah, oh, that's lovely.
That's really great to hear. Also, it's not just singing, it's style. Because if you remember you from that song and the video that went with it, dungarees.
The dungarees.
You had dungarees and you made dungarees very, very cool.
Yeah, I did, didn't I? Even though they were pink, they were cool.
They were very, very cool. So how do you then keep it up? When you do something like Don't Go Breaking My Heart, you set those records for being #1 in the charts. What then followed after that? How did it go? And, I mean, we're trying to encapsulate 60 years here in 6
I know,
minutes.
it's tricky, isn't it?
Yeah.
It comes in decades. I had my 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s phases. And I've always had ups and downs, you know, I think most artists do. And you've got to live a little bit in between the times when you're performing.
Yeah.
You've got to have some kind of life to write your songs about. But I met Carmelo in the mid-90s and we've been working together ever since.
So Carmelo was responsible for another change of direction or a new you. And what way did it develop, Carmelo? For you to work alongside her, what did you bring to the party?
Well, I produced a couple of tracks on a best-of compilation. And when I heard her, I just thought, wow. And we had a guy called Steve Brown that managed us. He used to look after Billy Connolly and people. And he encouraged us, we kind of call it turning left. And we just sort of ignored what was going on commercially, let's say, and just doing what we wanted to do.
Well, what you're going to do it now for us because we're going to play Kiki's new album out. It's called The Long Ride Home with Carmelo. Yeah. And it's going to be out, well, it's out now. It is out now. What are you guys going to sing or perform from that?
The Long Ride Home, it's just an acoustic version. It's an epic on the album. It's got all sorts on it. But,
and it has, I know, to me, it has undertones or overtones of country music. There's a bit of, there's a bit of like almost like Jolene there. I love that sort of, you know,
Dolly.
Country sort of dolly. But you know, it's a bit of country. But anyway, let people judge themselves.
That's another track.
It is beautiful. It is beautiful. And here it is.
Thank you.
Long Ride Home.
Give us a little rendition.
Come on, let's.
So this is Long Ride Home.
And we'll talk more after this.
People say nothing from today will still remain or be the same. But I believe the mystery runs deeper. The road ahead is calling me again. I walk into the garden
my way. A bed of roses is waiting for me there. At the autumn of each day, you better stop. Think of what you say. Think of how the power controls your mind. Don't ask the preacher man or the sinner man. The long ride home is yours alone to find. People say nothing but the truth is on their side. They've seen the light, but I still believe in a deeper understanding beyond the world that's white and black and white. I walk into the silence. I hear the garden call my name. A bed of roses still waiting for me there. In the paradise we made, you better stop. Think of what you do. Think of how the power controls your mind. Don't ask the preacher man or the sinner man. The long ride home, choose a road to find. You say, think of how the power controls your mind. Don't ask the preacher man or the sinner man. The long ride home is yours alone to find. The long ride home is yours alone to find.
Wow, that was
Beautiful.
such an absolute privilege.
Yeah,
you just sound as good as ever, and you look absolutely amazing. And there will be lots of young women who see you as a huge inspiration. What would you say to any young women who who put off the music industry these days? It's sort of over-sexualised, isn't it?
Yeah.
Young girls are supposed to sort of take all their clothes off and swan about. I mean, you're killing it still.
Oh, thank you. The thing is that, I've done it all my life, and it keeps you healthy because you have to be in good shape, to perform live like we do. And I think sleep's my key, actually. I'm a good... Yeah.
But the thing that amazes me, you can go from being rock chick to being Motown to being country. I mean, to me, I just hear country in that, and it's beautiful. Your range is absolutely
the harmonies
fantastic.
are gorgeous.
And do you feel happier having a partner? I mean, we were talking a lot about Elton, and then Carmelo's here as well. Does it give you? I mean, it's like being a television presenter. You can either prefer to be on your own, or you do well with a partner, as I do. As I do, all together now.
I do.
Well, I like it. I like working with people, and I like working with Carmelo. Obviously, it's been 28 years now. And I think, we both, I'm speaking for you, we both reached a point in our music lives where we wanted to do something that wasn't chasing the charts or chasing something.
Yes, you've done that.
And so I thought, I've got to do something that's music. And we decided to go out as Kiki Dee and Carmelo Lugeri because it's not Don't Go Breaking My Heart. And I adore that song, and I adore my 70s career. But I wanted to move on.
Yeah,
well,
fair
it was also the Rocket Man film, to see you portrayed in that must have been interesting.
With a fag.
With that. And the final thing, in Northern Ireland, you're not known as Kiki Dee.
He's been saying this all morning.
It's true. When I was 16, they don't call you Kiki Dee in Northern Ireland.
What do they call me?
Kinky Dee. Kinky Dee. Oh, I love that Kinky Dee song. She's brilliant, that Kinky Dee.
Did you know that?
Kinky Dee's in concert.
But did you know they were going to call me Kinky?
Oh, really?
At the record label when I was 16, yeah. And I said to my dad, I want to be singing in 5 years' time. You know, I can't be kinky.
Yeah. Yeah, you made the right call there.
Well, you're just brilliant. Carmelo, thank you very much indeed.
That was such a treat,
pleasure to see that.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. Don't go breaking our heart. All that. Look, we've got more showbiz right after the break. Here's your weather outlook for the next few days.
Looking ahead to today's weather, and the UK is looking rather cloudy in most areas this morning with some patchy rain in places. Let's take a look at the details. By the middle of the day, some brighter weather will be developing across the southwest of England, although this is likely to spark off a scattering of sharp showers. The southeast is likely to remain under a thicker blanket of cloud, and although most places look dry, the odd spot of drizzle is possible. Heading across to Wales, and here cloud will be lifting and thinning to give some sunshine, although as it warms up, a few showers will break out. The Midlands will continue to see rather a lot of cloud, giving the odd patch of light rain, and as a result, the temperature will be pegged back a little bit too. It'll feel quite chilly across parts of northeast England, as cloudy skies and some local drizzle will be combined with a cool, albeit gentle breeze blowing in off the North Sea. Most of Scotland will be shrouded in a blanket of cloud as well, and there'll be a bit of an east to west split in temperature, with the highest values towards the west. Little sunshine is likely across Northern Ireland around lunchtime, and there'll be a few showers, especially in the east. Nonetheless, temperatures will be around the early May average. Some heavier showers will develop across Wales and the southwest this afternoon, and rain will arrive in the northwest this evening. And that's how the weather is shaping up for the rest of the day.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debates, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
On radio, they call it the drive time slot, 4 p.m. until 6 p.m. as listeners head home. It's that part of the schedule when the dust of the day's events begin to clarify, and we try to make sense of it for you. Brazier is drive time for radio and TV. It's fast, it's punchy, it's opinionated, there's a Brazier angle and a little bit of levity.
That's the question. That's two questions, actually.
That's Brazier, Monday to Thursday, 4 till 6 on GB News.
Hello, I'm Patrick Christie's.
And I'm Mercy Moroki.
Make sure that you join us Monday to Thursday, 10 a.m. until midday, right here on GB News for To The Point.
We're not afraid to talk about the topics that matter to you or the big topics that always matter.
We cover absolutely everything, from the breaking political stories of the day to law and order, what's going on in the channel. We're not afraid to hold people to account.
We always make sure we include your views on our show.
Indeed, if you're thinking it, you can guarantee that we're saying it. So make sure you join the conversation with us, 10 a.m. until midday, Monday to Thursday for To The Point on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Welcome back. Good to see you again. It's Eamonn and Isabel here. The time's 9:20 on this Tuesday morning.
We're going to bring you up to date on the latest headlines. The government's being threatened with legal action over so-called unreasonable delays in processing hundreds of Ukrainian visa applications. Potential sponsors under the Homes for Ukraine scheme say it's putting refugees at risk.
There's a post office strike today. Workers are striking today in a dispute that's over pay. The Communication Workers Union say it's because of a 2021 pay freeze, and then followed by an exceptionally poor offer of a 2% increase from April this year.
And we're going to be talking about this with Stephanie Tecci in just a moment. A parade of A-listers have celebrated American fashion at the annual Met Gala in New York. This year's guests were told to dress in gilded glamour. We'll be finding out who made the red carpet a success and who didn't in just a moment.
Well, let's begin with that. So, in New York last night, all the great and the good assembled for this Met Gala. And Steph, what did you think of what you saw?
Gosh, I loved it. The Met Gala is like one of my favourite events of the year because I love fashion and I love all the styles that comes onto the red carpet. And I like to see who stuck to brief and who was a bit of a fashion faux pas. And last night did not disappoint. I would have to say the main character of the show was Kim Kardashian. Not surprised. She was wearing the £4 million dress Marilyn Monroe wore to sing Happy Birthday to President Kennedy in 1962. She's become the first person to have worn the dress in its 60-year history.
My word.
Guys, Kim admitted that she had to lose 16 pounds to fit in that dress over 3 weeks. So she said she had
Why did she leave it for to the last 3 weeks?
I don't know. Well, to be honest, she
maybe it was only agreed at the last minute.
Right.
I mean, that is an amazing honour. That is history.
Incredible.
I'm actually surprised any museum would allow that out to be used.
Definitely.
Marilyn Monroe in that, and we only ever see black and white footage of her in that, to actually see the real
full colour. Well, when they delivered the dress to Kim, they had armed guards around her, they had gloves, so they fully protected that dress.
How much would that be worth?
£4 million.
4 million. I'm not surprised.
And no one else has
Happy
worn
birthday,
it
Mr. President.
And what about her mum? She was going, speaking of presidents, her mum went as Jackie Kennedy.
Yeah, she looked...
Well, I wasn't keen on it, to be honest.
I kind of liked it. I thought it was a different look for Kris Jenner, but there was other Kardashian-Jenner people there. Kendall Jenner wasn't really good for me.
This was my outfit of the night. I
thought it was a bit weird with the platinum blonde eyebrows. And Kylie Jenner, actually, she was a big no-no for me because she was wearing, like, a bridal dress. She looked like Bridezilla, which was really bad. I thought this was, like, her first Met Gala, and she did not impress.
Who are we looking at there?
So now we're looking at Chloe, who also went for a gold, like Kim Kardashian.
Her dress is too much like the real thing, which I think is a bit of a spoiler there.
That is Kylie Jenner's dress, and I thought
looks like a toilet roll cover.
Yeah, I thought that was a big fashion faux pas for me. I'm like, this is your first Met Gala.
Looks like her first
Dress
communion.
Up, look good for the... But I did like Blake Lively as well, because she was one of the hosts. And Blake Lively, she was wearing Versace, hopefully it comes up, but she was matching with the staircase of the Met Gala, which looked really good.
Oh, there's Ryan Reynolds.
So she was wearing Versace, and what happens is when she went up the stairs, it looks pink, but then when she unveiled the bow, it turned blue, and every year she always matches with the staircase.
And she was hosting the event, wasn't she?
Yeah, she was hosting.
Gosh, that's a lot of trail there, isn't it?
It is, but the Brits done us well yesterday as well. We had a few Brits. Kate Moss was there. She looked fantastic, timeless. And then we had Stormzy.
Hold on, we've got Kate coming.
Yeah.
OK,
there we
that's
go.
a bit more covered up than we're used to.
Yeah, classic black, classic glamour.
Speaking of covered up, is it Cara Delevingne you're about to mention next?
Cara. Actually, she was like one of my favourite looks of the night. I thought for creativity, she definitely gets a 10 out of 10 because Cara decided to go bare-chested.
Here she is. She's wearing nothing but gold paint.
Spray painted in gold. She was wearing Dior trousers, but definitely she gets top marks for creativity.
And for braveness.
Okay.
I'm not sure I could do that.
Let's hit upon another couple of stories. In the West End, we're one big production short. Cinderella has been cancelled.
Yeah, you know, during the pandemic, it was very hard for theatre performers. And Sir Andrew Lloyd Webber was one of the people that was onto the government saying open our theatres, but now he's not in the good books of Theatreland because he announced that his Cinderella production is coming to a close in June, and all the performers hadn't heard that it was that they had lost their jobs basically.
Okay, is that due to the pandemic? Probably a bit of that, but is it any good?
I've heard it's not good.
I've heard it's a bit trashy and stuff, but you know, still people have lost their jobs and not in a nice way.
Someone giving up their job on the telly on Channel 4, Anne Robinson. She was the latest host of Countdown, and she's saying bye-bye.
Yeah, she says she's done more than was required for her over the past year. She says she's done 40 more episodes than she was contracted to, and she said it was taking her toll. You know, she was recording like 3 shows in about 11-hour days.
She's a workaholic. That's not the true story, is it, Stephanie? This is a row With Rachel Riley. And I have to say, the two of them are formidable women.
Yeah.
And I can imagine that's quite a fight.
Well, both of them have been quite honest about it. Anne has said that Rachel was always loud on set. She wasn't good with her timekeeping. She was always on her mobile phone. And Rachel has come back and said, well, Anne wasn't the most cuddly person to have around. So, but Anne has said that's not the reason why I'm leaving. She says she's got a big garden she wants to tend to. She's got grandkids. And now, actually, Eamonn, she says she wants to host with Gary Lineker on Match of the Day.
So do I. The three of us could do that. That's a good threesome.
That will be an awesome threesome.
She got record ratings on Countdown.
She did. And she's hoping that an older woman will be the next woman to host the show.
Anne is 77.
Yeah, I think she's still got a lot in her.
She deserves a retirement.
Yeah, OK. Thank you very much indeed for that, Stephanie. Thank you. Packed a lot in there. And we'll say goodbye to Stephanie. We'll say goodbye to you.
Yeah.
Hopefully we'll say hello to you once again tomorrow morning. Thank you for watching. Thank you for making this the fastest growing breakfast station on the planet, not only in the UK. So thank you very much indeed for that.
And we're going to hand over the reins now to Tom Harwood, who is here with the briefing. But first of all, here's your forecast.
Looking ahead to today's weather, and the UK is looking rather cloudy in most areas this morning with some patchy rain in places. Let's take a look at the details. By the middle of the day, some brighter weather will be developing across the southwest of England, although this is likely to spark off a scattering of sharp showers. The southeast is likely to remain under a thicker blanket of cloud, and although most places look dry, the odd spot of drizzle is possible. Heading across to Wales, and here cloud will be lifting and thinning to give some sunshine, although as it warms up, a few showers will break out. The Midlands will continue to see rather a lot of cloud, giving the odd patch of light rain, and as a result, the temperature will be pegged back a little bit too. It'll feel quite chilly across parts of northeast England, as cloudy skies and some local drizzle will be combined with a cool, albeit gentle breeze blowing in off the North Sea. Most of Scotland will be shrouded in a blanket of cloud as well, and there'll be a bit of an east to west split in temperature, with the highest values towards the west. Little sunshine is likely across Northern Ireland around lunchtime, and there'll be a few showers, especially in the east. Nonetheless, temperatures will be around the early May average. Some heavier showers will develop across Wales and the southwest this afternoon, and rain will arrive in the northwest this evening. And that's how the weather is shaping up for the rest of the day.
Tonight on GB News, at 6, it's Deebs & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage.